Hey everyone, welcome. I'm so excited to do this free coaching call today. I've offered to just coach everyone that wants coaching as long as that takes, unless I just, get to the point where it's not so helpful for me to be coaching anymore. So I'm thinking about 3 hours, but I think everyone should be able to really get their questions answered. And there are some people that wrote in some questions. So with this call, I just want you to know that you're not obligated to participate. If you do want to, go ahead and raise your hand, or you can pop in on the chat and I'll be integrating that as we talk. And then just in general, these kind of coaching calls, I have a group called Alignment Academy where we do coaching calls twice a week. And not everyone gets coached every time, but if you have a question in your mind already, listen to all of these answers from people and apply them to your question. And maybe there's even something that you realize that you didn't have a question on. I mean, you did, but you didn't consciously realize it. So as you're listening, you can be actively listening and thinking about how it applies to you. And it will take this time that you're spending on the call to another level rather than just kind of like waiting and, thinking about what you're going to say. And if you get nervous at all, like there are a lot of nice techniques that you can do to calm yourself as you're doing something like this, if it's nerve-wracking. So one thing we can just do all together right now, and you can do it throughout the call if you like, is to just grab something that you have. Someone gave me a crystal, so you probably don't have something like this, but it could be like a water bottle or a pen or your phone, just something that you could easily pass from one hand to the other. And the idea is you're going to cross midline and you're going to involve both sides of the brain. And because there's that other distraction, you're going to notice, a lot of people notice like a calming effect of just doing that. So, I could like right now I'm doing it and you might not even notice because Zoom only shows from here up. So feel free to like take a breath and really it's not that scary. We're just talking. And the other thing I would like to remind you guys to just keep in mind is that some people on these calls are in a place where it's kind of like triggering to hear a lot of details about symptoms or, and so that's not to say you can't, describe to me so that I understand what's going on, but also just keep in mind, you might not want to, describe a surgery procedure or something that everyone would be like, oh, not everyone, but some people are a little more sensitive. And honestly, most of us that have mind body type stuff, we tend to be more sensitive, right? So a lot of times, I mean, I can't even count the number of times someone's describing something and I'll feel it in my body, especially if it's like a place I've had something, left lower back, and my left lower back goes, so. But the other thing, if that does happen to you, that's normal. So not to freak out and think like something's going wrong. I'm just at the point now, I kind of laugh at it like, oh, look how responsive my body is. Look how like amazing that mind body connection is. It's working so quickly and so strong. But I don't have to freak out about it. And when I don't, it goes right away. Oh, let's make sure everyone is muted too, unless you are getting called on for coaching, which I am ready to do. No one has their hand raised yet, so go ahead and raise your hand. And if no one's ready, okay, someone's ready, sweet. I'll be integrating in these questions that people wrote in. So Renee, go ahead and unmute, please, so we can talk. And
Yeah.
hi.
Yeah, thanks for doing this, Betsy. This is awesome. Yeah, so my big thing that I've been having an issue with is food, as you know, just being able to tolerate different foods. And today I thought it'd be a good day to get coaching because I just introduced a new food. And I know I've told you in the past, like every time I try to introduce a new food into my diet, I have a reaction. I have a headache. Like I already have a little bit of a mild headache now. Like I introduced an egg today. So that was the new thing that I put in. And I'm trying to really trying to improve my diet because I'm on the autoimmune protocol, which is like very strict. And it's
Mm,
the autoimmune protocol, but stricter because I react to so many things. So
mhm.
yeah, so today I really want to add eggs back into my diet. And
Yeah.
yeah, and it's funny because sometimes I feel like I'll react more than others to the same food. So that's
Mhm.
why I know we talked about it being like mind body.
Yeah.
So I'd
Yeah.
love to like pass
Yeah.
this of being able to like eat a few more foods.
Yeah. Yeah. And from what you described, we know there's so much predictive coding, right? You're like,
Yes.
when I introduce a new food, I get a headache and this is what happens. And so we want to just, you know that so much of what's going on is probably going to be predictive coding. And so um, I noticed for myself, even thinking of, coffee when coffee was hurting my stomach, even thinking of it, I would start to, my stomach would start to churn a little. So,
Yeah.
so you're at the point that you've introduced the food. Oh, there was one little thing I wanted to say. You said, like, I really want to improve my diet.
Mm.
And you feel there's kind of that like neediness and like something's wrong here kind of
Yeah.
sentiment with it. So maybe you could, I'm just going to offer, like, maybe you could say something like, I really want to like expand my diet, or like, or have, or
Okay.
I really want to enjoy even more foods, or I don't know if there's any way that's just like a little softer to say it, even those little tweaks can help.
Yes, I've read that before about your languaging. Yeah, and
Yeah.
also like my big dream is to be able to just eat in a restaurant
Hmm.
without
Yeah. So I want
having a big
freedom
reaction.
around food, or like,
Freedom.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Freedom.
Yeah, even thinking of the feeling that you want to have, then instead of like, I really want to improve my diet, you're like, oh, I love when I can eat all the delicious foods of the world.
Okay.
Whatever.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
That sounds good.
Okay. So just little, tweaks or ways of reframing slightly. It's not so much the words themselves, but it's the feeling that you get when you're saying them. And anytime there's like an urgency, or like, I'm broken and I really need to, fix this about me, already you're a little guarded with that change. Your nervous system's a little bit on guard.
Yes, that makes so much
Yeah.
sense.
Okay. So what we want to send are messages of safety. You're eating a new food. And as we know with this work, Dr. Schubiner says it so clearly, foods do not cause pain. Foods
Mhm.
do not cause pain. So um, we just, that's the ultimate goal of what you want to be believing, but that's probably not very believable right now.
Mm.
But one thing you could think of is, what is your reaction when you have the symptom? So there could be a symptom and you respond in a way that amplifies it or decreases it. So the symptom coming up is not as big of a deal as how you respond to it. So when you have this little mild headache or any other symptom, what kinds of things do you think, Renee?
I definitely have some fear around it, like because
Mm,
in the past I've had severe migraines that last like 10 days where I can't get out of bed. So I always have that fear that's going to amplify. But it
mhm.
hasn't really I've healed to a certain level where you're right. Like I'll get the headache, but it's not usually the end of the world. Like it'll make me a little irritable, but it usually doesn't amplify to that extent. But the fear that it will is always there. And even when I'm
Yes.
introducing the food, I have a lot of fear around food because I used to eat something and be in excruciating like pain in my stomach or
Yeah.
have a really bad headache. So I
Yeah.
know that that fear is still there as much as I try to be calm and relaxed and happy when I eat
Yeah.
it. I know somewhere in my subconscious, like, oh God,
Yeah.
what's gonna happen to me?
Yeah. So
Or I'll
that's good to
enjoy something.
notice. Yeah.
Yeah. Especially
Yeah.
when it tastes good. I'll be like, oh God, something bad's gonna happen to me. This is too good.
Right? Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Yes. That is so, so interesting because, yeah, as you say that, as I think, a lot of those really delicious foods are like, quote unquote, bad foods. And, even if you're not reactive to them, um, they're like not healthy for you or whatever. But
Yeah,
Dr.
yeah, I'm not
Schubiner
even there
says,
yet.
what was
Like, I
that?
just wanna eat eggs. I said, "I'm not even
Yeah,
there yet where I'm getting the
yeah.
really bad stuff." I'm like, "I just wanna
Yeah.
eat eggs."
Well, and that brings me to like, even going back a little step is like, how were you feeling when you were eating the eggs? And like when you even got the idea to eat the eggs, like how are you feeling? Because like that even makes a difference.
Yeah, well, I was feeling really happy about it, but
Mhm.
in the back of my mind, I'm like, it was one of the foods I was eating every day. So when I was feeling really bad, so I was wondering if that was the culprit food. So, and I love eggs and I don't really like a lot of meat, so I want to get protein in a nice easy way, like, throwing a
Mhm.
hard-boiled egg on a salad or having like some
Mhm.
eggs with my favorite thing is eggs and potatoes, which is what I had this morning.
Mhm. Yeah.
So,
Okay.
I feel happy on one level, but I do know there's the fear underneath it
Okay.
somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah. So even those kind of choices, just you can think of like stretch but not stress. That's a term I
Oh,
got
yeah.
from Deb Dana's book, Anchored. And like if it felt like a good stretch, there's a little bit of fear. It's not probably going to be completely fear free until your brain sees a few times that you can handle it. But
Mhm.
stretch. But if it feels too much like forced and stressful, and I really need to do this because that's a good source, you know what I mean? I'm not saying you're saying it that way. So just feel for yourself, whether it was like, do you feel like it was more that stretch or stress?
Mm. Um, I felt like it was a stretch. I waited a long time. Like I got eggs with a really late date and I waited until I felt better about eating it.
Yeah. Oh, good. I
Um,
love that.
yeah. Yeah, I
Okay.
am really trying to do that.
Hmm.
I was gonna say something
Okay.
else about that, but I
Okay.
forgot.
So that's
Yeah.
good. We already know that going in, you'd like cleaned up your thoughts about it a little and you were feeling kind of
Yeah.
good about it. And there's this part of you that really likes it. And that is a fascinating story that like something that I'm really enjoying is like gonna hurt me. Like
Mhm.
we have this a few things in our society like no pain no gain, and you have to work really hard and suffer for things to feel good, or to deserve to feel good. And that is just like one of those little examples too of like, when you start to feel good, be careful because then you're going to feel bad.
Yes. Yeah, yeah.
That's the common theme of the nervous system, is like be in all these activated or shut down states, because if you start to feel good, bad things might happen, so you have to be aware all the time. But what we need
Mhm.
to do, most of us here really hardly ever get into that rest and repair state and just you know, let ourselves do really fun things without guilt, and, just lays around, and there's so much judgment. So getting to that parasympathetic calm state more and more and more,
Yeah.
and just being like, this is the normal state. Things are supposed to feel good. I don't have to work hard for things to feel good. If I start
Yeah.
feeling
Yeah.
bad, something's off.
Right. You know what I was gonna say? I realized I didn't realize it till you said it, but I do have that urgency because I feel like I studied nutrition and
Oh,
so that's the other thing too. I was trying to heal myself, which it did help a lot. There's a lot of things I did that did help me in the nutrition,
yeah.
but um there was a thing where when I saw one of the nutritionists, she was like, "Yeah, we really need to, expand your microbiome because your foods are so limited. Like you want to start." So I'm always like, "I'm never gonna expand it." Like I do tend to catastrophize
Mm,
around that because every
yeah.
time I add something, it doesn't go well, and I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh," and I know that it's like worse for you. So like the knowledge
Yeah.
that I know, sometimes I use it against myself. Like,
Oh my
"Oh God,
gosh.
I
Yeah.
don't have enough
That,
microbiome. Now I'm not gonna be able
yeah.
to eat it."
Just, yeah. You know, when you believe those things and you do those protocols and they work, it's more because you believe that. But there are people that eat all kinds of foods. There's this culture I remember seeing a program about in what's it called, Alaska, that all they do is eat like whale blubber, and they have like the lowest cholesterol, and so like
Wow.
it's you know how they always change the things they say about food. It's
Yes.
just like it has more to do with your belief in food. And
Okay.
they've even shown that with, the milkshake study. I'm sure you've heard it because Renee's in my group, but for those of you who haven't heard it, they took the same identical drink. On one label, they said this is a nutritious drink and it's like high protein or whatever. And The other drink was like a rich chocolatey drink that was like decadent, and people processed it differently in their body based on what they believed they were drinking. I just heard a new one too, Renee, and I haven't shared this with the group, so maybe you haven't heard this, but they were feeding rabbits a high cholesterol diet in an experiment. And they noticed that one group of rabbits was not getting high cholesterol. And that researcher was petting the rabbit before he fed them. And so they had that, I would say, rest and repair state as they were eating that bad, quote unquote, food, and they didn't develop high cholesterol.
Wow.
Yeah. So all of that stuff, although it's been helpful, you said, to a point in your life, when you start thinking it now, how does that all feel in your body about the microbiome and nutrition?
Oh yeah, that feels, it does produce some anxiety for me for sure. It takes me out of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what we want to send, those messages of safety, and just notice when those things come up, how that feels in your body. That's your cue or your clue that you're, dysregulated. You're going into probably flight. Flight is like, I've got to figure things out and fix them. I've got to be perfect. If I'm just more perfect, then I'll be loved, or I'll feel safe, or, I'll feel better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Versus this is your body knows what is going to be good for you and what you need. And you see this with children all the time. They'll eat a few bites of things and they'll survive on such little food, and they're running all around, and you're like, how is this even working? But your body knows what you need.
Mm-hmm.
Does that feel true to you?
Yeah. Yeah, it does.
Okay. And you've survived this long on that limited diet, so like,
Mm-hmm.
we're still here to talk about it. So yeah. So anyway, the more we can just be like, okay, that is the narrative that produces a lot of anxiety. And also this could possibly be true too, that I'm like, expanding how I nourish my body, and it's starting to really feel good to trust food again and not be scared of enjoyment and pleasure and enjoying
Mm-hmm.
food. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So how's that sitting right now? Any questions?
Good. I feel like, yeah, I've learned so much from this class. I just feel like, it's worked in a lot of ways. It's just kind of like this last area. I'm just like, what is going to help me break through? Because I'm knowing the things. I'm trying to relax my nervous system when I eat. I'm trying to feel happy and joyful. Like I'm doing all the things,
Mm-hmm.
but not yet,
Yeah.
without the symptoms.
Well, okay, the symptoms coming up is not even a big deal. Like, I would expect at first the symptoms will come up. It's how you react to them that will determine if the brain keeps producing them or extinguishes them. So Alan Gordon says it's actually better for rewiring if you have a symptom and react neutrally to it than if you had no symptom at all.
Oh, okay.
So you're on the right track and you're on the right path. And this is for everyone, not just if your issue is with food. This is often seen when you start to go back to exercising, or you go back to doing something you've associated with discomfort, pain, injury, whatever. And that's where graded exposure can be really helpful. Imagining you doing the thing with joy, with happiness, with a smile in real life on your face. So you could do some graded exposure before. And then Renee, since you have some like mild symptoms right now, we can practice together some somatic tracking, and everyone who's in a place that wants to try this can do it too, and just substitute, your own answers in your head as I guide Renee through hers. Because a mild headache, I don't know if you've ever had one go away. Has that ever happened with you, that you've started to have a mild headache and it goes away? Or is your pattern, has it usually been that it progresses?
It has gone away. It used to progress when they were bad, but I think I think you're right. I think I make it worse because of the fear. So it
Yeah.
tends not to go away because I tend to have the fear when I get them.
Yes. I mean, any kind of fear, whether it's annoyance or despair or hopelessness or frustration or actual worry, anxiety, that all is like a volume knob to pain, right? And
Wow.
same with catastrophizing. What you
Mm.
focus on, you create more of. So if you're like, oh no, I have this headache, and you think of the other times, and this is all happening subconsciously, right? So the best you can do is be aware of it, start to see it happening, and then, just be the observer at least. So don't expect, like, just because you know this, that it's going to be super easy to, change those neural pathways immediately. But as you practice, it just gets easier to observe those thoughts. Catastrophizing, fear, there's a pain fear cycle. That's what they call it in pain science. So it's really just like, this is important, this is dangerous, and then the brain produces it more, and they're like, oh no, this is happening again. Oh, and what we always do, our brain goes back to like the very worst time. Like, remember when I had depression for 3 months as a teenager? I hope I don't, and that was like 30 years ago, but the brain gets one little taste of it. I am depressed for one day, and then the brain's like, oh my gosh, what if this is this is going to be a quarter of my year now? Like, we just go there. So just being like, oh, there's my brain catastrophizing, oh, there's my brain wanting to remind me of this stuff from the past. And actually, what you said both times when I've asked you these kinds of things is, lately it's been actually a lot better. And I know you've been in Alignment Academy for several months, and so you could also start the narrative of like, I have new tools now, and I have new ways to handle this. And this symptom doesn't mean, it's going to the bad place, because that's only does that when I react with so much fear. But the more I practice this, and sometimes I can't just change my thoughts, so I just distract, and I know all these things that help me feel better, and I know these ways to just go into the sensation and instead of resisting it. And sometimes it's even gone away, and that might happen today, that kind of
Mhm.
thing.
Yeah, thank you. That sounds
Yeah.
good.
So do you want to do just a tiny bit of somatic tracking on it together?
Yeah, that would be
Okay.
great.
All right. So just get comfortable. Um, Close your eyes if you can, and just maybe start focusing on the breath, taking some breaths and noticing the breath, maybe where you feel it the most, in your nose or your throat, or your chest. Noticing if you want to take some deeper breaths, but not forcing it all. The nervous system responds better to an invitation than a demand. So when we notice something, we don't want that urgency to fix it. We just want to be like kids laying on the ground, watching the clouds in the sky. We're just like, oh, look at that. Fascination, curiosity. Okay.
Mhm. Mhm.
So go ahead and do a body scan with, mentally checking in, imagining the different areas of your body as you scan through, noticing them, noticing the different places you have sensation. It might be a few different places, and just focusing on which one is getting your attention the most. It might be the head, it might be something totally different. So right in this moment, what's getting your attention the most?
My head, definitely.
Okay. So I want you to describe where in the head you're feeling that sensation, how much space it's taking up.
It's taking up the whole top area of my head from like my forehead, all the way up.
Okay. And how would you describe that sensation? Like a tight or a burning or a numb or a stabbing or a tingling or a tense or like what kind of words would you use for that?
I would say it's like just an ache, kind of
Ache.
like a dull ache. Like I would give it like a maybe a 7 out of 10.
Okay. And is that area, when it's aching, does it have any movement to it? Like, is the ache constant, or does it vary at all?
Yeah, no, it's constant.
Constant. 7 out of 10, dull ache. And as you imagine that area, do you imagine that space to have movement, like a high energy movement, or like a slow movement, or just no movement at all?
It's like no movement at all.
Mhm. So like a dense, solid type of space that's achy and
Yeah.
dull. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And then as you imagine it, does it have any kind of temperature, warm or cool or hot or cold?
It's warm.
Warm. And does it have any kind of color? Do you imagine a color to it?
Yeah, it's black, like
Oh,
black, warm, heavy, and doesn't move.
uh-huh. And is there any kind of texture you imagine, like a plastic or metal or a, you know, gas or a, like how would you describe it?
It's very dense, sort of like concrete.
Okay. Okay. All right. So I think we have a good description of it. And even just doing that helps rewire those neural pathways of sensation catastrophizing to sensation and not making as big of a deal of it emotionally, like we're just talking about it like a conversation, and then
Mhm.
already the brain's production of that is going to be a little less because it's less less of a reaction, less intense, and so it's like, oh, okay, we don't have to produce it as much. That's the idea with somatic tracking. We're just changing our reaction to the sensation so the brain knows not to keep producing it at that level.
Mhm.
So then I think of this as like a little science experiment time, because again, we're not just like, okay, what should we do? Break up the concrete. Let's go break it up. We're not like attacking it. We're just like, we're going to try some little things and see how that area reacts. So first, I want you to just take some breaths. And as you are breathing in, I want you to imagine breathing that air all the way up into that space. And, if you're doing this along and it's your knee, imagine breathing down all the way and sending the breath into the knee if you can. And then for you, Renee, taking that breath up, and maybe it goes like around the concrete, or maybe it starts to find some holes and go through it, or maybe it is a cool breath and so it cools it, or maybe you imagine a color like a white or a golden color or a lighter color, and you combine it and see if the like how the colors react together. So I'll give you a few breaths to imagine whatever comes up for you. Those are just some suggestions that I gave, but your subconscious may even just like bring something totally different up. And again, it's like a science experiment. We're just like watching the reaction, not judging it.
Yeah, and kind of imagining like some holes in it so it's not so dense. I brought in
Yeah.
the color white,
Mm-hmm.
made it feel a little better, like lighter and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
more like more brittle, not so dense,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's
like
like
it would
opening up some
crumble.
space.
Yeah, there's space and air in it now.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. How's the temperature? Did you imagine anything cooling there?
Yeah, it's definitely not as warm.
Okay. Okay. How's that feeling to you? Did that
Um, Interestingly enough, it still kind of aches the same amount.
Okay.
Even though the visual is better, like
Okay.
it's definitely still registering the same amount of pain.
Okay. Um, is there anything else different that you notice as far as like how it's looking? Did you say the color is like a little lighter too now?
Yeah, I brought in
Okay.
a white color before it
Uh-huh.
was really black,
Okay.
and it felt sort of like a lid, but and now it doesn't feel like a lid anymore, but the pain level seems to be the same.
Mm-hmm. And the ache, and you said it's like through that whole area and it's like constant, yeah?
Yeah.
So if you could just imagine, like, what would be like a soothing thing to imagine? Like, if it was like a tight pressure, you might imagine releasing some of the pressure. Or if it was a something that was knotted, you might imagine untying a knot or something. So for this, is there anything that comes to your mind, Renee?
Hmm. It's weird. I can't imagine any way the pressure could release, but that's what it feels like. It's like a
Mm.
pressure. Um,
Mhm.
I'm having trouble finding like an opposite way to release the pressure.
Mm. What if you just imagine that somewhere on the top of your head, you create this little valve that you can open and you can just release the pressure out of it?
Okay, let me try that.
If it was something lower body that you're doing, I would imagine like the sacrum, the tailbone. I love to imagine like a little valve there that you just open and, release pressure out of that or
Mm,
energy or whatever. Or if
yeah.
something else comes to your mind.
Yeah, I don't know why I'm not feeling that working. I'm trying to visualize that.
Okay.
I think I'm gonna try to do like a cold pack.
Yeah.
That
Okay,
be
give
cool.
that a shot. And then I have another direction we can go to, and this is such a great example because sometimes this is what happens,
Yeah, I just
we're
feel
like,
stuck there. I don't know. It just
yeah,
feels
we're like, okay,
like
let's do our somatic tracking and fix this, and it just doesn't happen how we want. So this is a good chance to do what they call in the way out. Alan Gordon calls it leaning into positive sensation, I think is what he calls it.
okay.
So that would be, let's find a place in your body that feels really neutral, like maybe your fingertip or your tip of your toe, or something that feels good in your body. Like maybe breathing feels really good and you want to just focus on your chest and the breathing. So what comes to mind for you, Renee, to focus on other than your head?
I think the breathing sounds good.
Okay. So you want to just make sure it's something that feels good for you. So if it's, if your thing is in your chest and breathing doesn't feel good, then find something that's either neutral or actually kind of feels good in your body, a relaxed place in your body. So with focusing on the breath, Renee, even if you want, you could like put your hands on your chest and then you can feel the chest expanding and you can feel that energy between your hands and your chest, and your chest can feel the skin of your hands, and you can just notice these sensations and the rhythm and the expansion there. And the breath actually is something that is so cool. If you think about it, we could have a little moment of gratitude for breath because it just happens subconsciously. Thank goodness. We don't have to wake up in the middle of the night to remember to breathe. Like all of this goes on. Our breath is always there supporting us and helping us. And as we do focus on it, we can change it. And the breath, because the vagus nerve innervates that area so heavily, is one of the areas that as we change it, we can cue our brain to get to that calmer state. So it's one of those tools we can use for, somatics, bottom up type of regulation. Hopefully these words, if you're listening, all make sense. I know I'm like throwing out a bunch of nervous system terms. Feel free to pop in the chat if you ever have any questions, by the way. So breathing as you exhale, it's actually engaging the parasympathetic calm state, which is the rest and repair state. So that's why those long exhales can be nice. So if you want, even right now, everyone and Renee, taking a deep sigh, if that feels good. Maybe a couple more. And if any of the breathing techniques like ever feel forced, don't do them. It's not about, just like with Renee, it's not about the foods that you eat. It's about how you're feeling. It's not about which techniques you're using and if you're doing breath work perfectly or not. It's about how you're feeling and what feels easiest to you. Choose that one. So as you focus on the breath, Renee, how's that feeling in your body? Just your breath part, don't check in back with your head yet.
Yeah, the breath feels good. I feel calmer.
Okay. And can you describe to me like how you're imagining that part in your chest? Like, do you, just like we did with the head, like how could you describe the color, the texture?
Yeah, it feels nice. It feels like blue and I feel calm and my chest feels open. I'm able to get air in and out easily.
Mhm.
So it's kind of like flowing.
Yeah, maybe you could even associate that with, it was blue and calm, and maybe there's like a ocean or like a body of water you've been to that's relaxing, or just a time that feels very tranquil. And you can even invite some of that feeling of like, okay, things are going to be okay. I've felt, safe in this place, and this is how it really feels to get to that parasympathetic calm state a little more. And as you do that and then check back in, is there any change with that area of your head as you check back in there?
I don't know why, but it's stubborn. I've tried to do this before and I don't seem to ever be able to move but you know what? It probably does feel a little bit better.
Okay. Okay.
I
Well,
guess
what
I'm
I would say,
wanting it to go away and it's not. I'm trying not to try to force
yeah.
it. But so I guess it's gone down like a notch or two.
Okay. Hey, you know what? That's something. Like, it's
Yeah.
just like with EFT tapping. If you guys have done that, you do a round of tapping and then you're like, oh, it went down a couple notches. Okay, I'll do another round, right? Like we spent 5 minutes on it and it went down a couple notches. So something neuroplastic is going on.
Hmm.
Like that. And the more you can get to that calm state, the better you'll feel.
Yeah.
So what I would suggest for you is distract, 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 distract today as much as you can.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
and especially like if there are any like things that really get your mind off it, calling a friend, not talking about this, watching a show, going on a bike ride, reading a book, not a pain book, a romance book or whatever, like a book for pleasure.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good.
You want to teach your brain that it's safe, it's possible this will go away. Even just having that possibility in your head might, you'll have a totally different result.
Yeah. 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 Thank you so much. This did help.
Yeah,
Did
no
help
problem.
a
I
lot of.
realized I'm like looking at the time that seemed to fly by for me. I know that was a long time in some people's eyes, but we really did cover a lot. So again, feel free to please try to apply that to your situation, even if it's not food. Same exact kind of thing with pain and returning to motion or things like that. Thank you, Renee. All right,
Thank you
Arlene, you've
so
been
much.
patiently waiting, you guys. um, feel free to be thinking if you want to raise your hand next too. All right, Arlene, how can I
Hi,
help
thank
you
you.
today?
Well, that was very enlightening. Thank
Oh,
you.
good. Awesome.
Um, so I have two shoulders that I need shoulder replacements, supposedly.
Okay.
And I just went and got my knee checked yesterday and I need a knee replacement.
Oh,
So I'm
so
in
how are they checking these, by the way? Is it like an MRI or X-ray
yeah,
or?
X-rays and then MRIs.
Okay.
And
And
and I'm in a
what is
lot
the
of
diagnosis?
pain.
Yeah.
Pardon?
Oh, I was just wondering what the diagnosis is from the MRIs and X-rays.
That I'm, pretty much bone on bone and there's no cartilage left.
Okay. In both shoulders and the knee.
Yes.
Mm,
But
okay.
I've been extremely stressed in the last, I'd say, 3 years, and
Oh, uh-huh.
I don't know if all this is because of the stress, and then I
Mhm.
have so much pain, and then I don't have much movement, and so I just retired, and now I'm trying to really work on my body.
Mhm.
So all I can think about is, "Oh my god, I need 3 surgeries."
Yeah. And when you think that, how does your body feel?
Terrible. I'm just terrible.
Yeah.
It's like I
Yeah.
feel hopeless and helpless.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And that, by the way, if I like to put it all in nervous system terms because it just kind of helps us have, I think, more compassion for it and understanding and vocabulary around it. But that's the freeze state, when you're like helpless, hopeless, something's wrong with me, this is never going to be good. It's just this, like, the way it affects the body when that nervous system is in that state, that's the freeze response, like a turtle going into its shell. So it actually makes you feel more tired, fatigued, brain fog, heavy. It changes the blood flow to the extremities. So you might feel more like numbness. Like it's crazy, because freeze, I mean, it really affects the body physically too.
Yes.
And yeah, being under a lot of stress, like we know that changes. So, every part of the body functions differently under stress, right? Because if we're running from a tiger, we're not going to be digesting food. So we know that, I mean, Dr. Schubiner says any condition where there's pain involved, even if it is cancer or anything, this method will help to some degree. We're not ever promising complete pain relief, but if you even had 20% less pain, like that might be something that you'd be like, I would definitely want that, or 50% less, or whatever. The particular diagnosis you have, that is one that they say that this is less effective for, but I'm sure you could find cases. I don't know. I mean, that might be something that would be a good question for someone like Dr. Schubiner. I know that he answers a lot of people's questions, but maybe the way I like to call it is like the path of least resistance is to get that surgery, to get the surgeries. But we know that so much can be changed about how we recover from surgery if we're like cleaning up our thoughts about pain. What I mean is, all the stress around pain and the anxiety around symptoms we were talking about with Renee, when we can really start to change how this is like a word that sometimes sounds weird, but quote unquote, catastrophize pain. That's how they phrase it in pain research. When we catastrophize pain, it increases pain. And so, and what they mean by catastrophize is so subtle. It means they have a pain catastrophizing scale that they use in research. And it's things like, I think about other times that I've been in pain. I desperately want the pain to stop. Nothing I can do helps. Like the kind of thoughts that would be normal for someone to think. It's not being in the present moment. It's thinking of worst case scenarios, and it's like a volume knob for pain. So there are ways of stressing less, of, finding enjoyable activities as much as you can, finding distractions, leaning into any of those moments of the parasympathetic calm state, those little glimmers, Dana calls them, and see where you get from there. Because I know, the pain researching, the PRT world, they want to make sure they're setting realistic expectations and not saying we're going to cure everything. And the things that they talk about that this is not 100% cure for is like cancer, a broken bone, an infection, and bone on bone arthritis, which is the term they use, which I kind of hate, but that's the term they use. And I have a client that's a radiologist, and he said that's actually the medical term they use, is bone on bone arthritis. So, but what I also know, because I've been in some of Dr. Schubiner's courses, is there have been times that someone has like a nerve that is impinged, that they think this is just a structural thing, there's no way around it, and the person somehow like becomes pain-free from this process. So there's, I don't want to give you false hope, but I do want to say there's no harm in reducing your stress level through some of these methods like somatic tracking and anything to calm your nervous system, basically.
Okay.
But how does that sit with you? What do you think?
That sounds good. That's a good start for me, calming the nervous system.
Yeah. Are there any times that you feel less bad? Any things that like specifically, like if you're watching a show or gardening or, you kind of get like distracted with something. I don't know what for you, if there's anything like that.
Yeah, there might be times when I do get
Mhm.
distracted and have less pain.
Yeah.
Um,
So
I think I need to think about that more.
yes, 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 yes. For everyone, and even if you're falling into this category of like, okay, these are like the 1% of people that, you know, have this diagnosis or whatever. Being the detective for the opposite is what they call it, where you're starting to look for, when I am thinking thoughts that feel good, I feel better. When I'm doing things that are fun, I feel better. Because remember, if you were here at the beginning of the call, we have this kind of all or nothing thinking, or like, if I start to feel good, I can't really feel good because I feel so bad. And so we're going to start to hold space for like both. Like, I have this pain, and there are sometimes that I have a little bit of joy, and I see that cute baby and I smile, and so you're going to like look for those times that you're a little more elevated and the pain is a little less, and lean into those times more. And this is what I want my brain to focus on more, because right now the brain, of course, is focused on pain and lack of movement and hopelessness. But I'm not saying it's easy, but there are little ways to shift that spotlight and train the brain to actually look for things that are better. So have you heard those studies with gratitude journals? It's like that,
Okay.
where people are assigned to look for 3 things they're grateful for every day for a month. And it actually changes how their brain is working, because instead of saying there's nothing to be grateful for and seeing all the bad things in the world, just by shifting how they're looking at, just 3 things that they're grateful for, by the end of the month, they're happier people. They report more life satisfaction. So again,
Okay.
for any of you in a lot of pain, like, I know this might sound like annoying or like really hard to do, and you want to be like, but Betsy, like, I'm in so much pain. So I get that, and I'm not trying to diminish that at all, but also just suggest that, this might be an example that's an analogy that helps. Right after my mom passed away, I was in grief, and it was sudden and unexpected, and kind of the first person that was close to me that I lost. So I was just not knowing how to feel. And I remember a couple days after, I was taking my daughter to school, and some music was on, and I started to kind of dance and sing and smile. And I was like, oh, I can't feel that, because, I shouldn't feel that, basically, because this bad thing is going on in my life. And so I can't enjoy this moment. So it's kind of like that. It's holding space for both, and seeing that sometimes I'm even able to shift that spotlight here. And then when you're not able to, don't beat yourself up, but just look for more of those like nourishing, enriching, satisfying things, and doing more of those and thinking more of those. And really, distraction is totally okay. The way they say it in The Way Out, how does he say it? Like, avoidance behaviors almost makes it sound like you're doing it wrong, or like you're avoiding something in a bad way. But no, instead of the pain signal and the volume knob being constantly cranked up because of how we're responding, we're teaching the brain to produce at least less of that neuroplastic component of your pain.
Okay.
Because everybody, being human, if you've had something chronically, you'll have some that's structural, some of the sensations structural is how they're theorizing it now. But also, like, your brain forms habits, right? Like, if you go to turn your key in the car, and then you have one of those push button cars, it takes you a few times before you remember to push the button. And then you go back to your other car and you go to push the button instead of turn it, right? Your brain adapts and forms these neural pathways of like, if I move this way, it's going to hurt. So I'll just produce the pain now. Right. So like some of it is neuroplastic. I think that's very safe to say. And that's why this technique, the PRT method, will help with any kind of pain, because lowering your stress level does lower pain, as you already noticed. Yeah.
Okay. Definitely does.
Okay.
And going back to what Renee was talking about with food,
Yeah.
I know that they say if you eat certain foods, they cause inflammation.
Yeah, Dr. Schubiner has a lot to say about that. And even it's so fascinating because Curable has even started to like say some stuff about foods. And I work with one of Dr. Schubiner's, well, one of the moderators, Lisa, works with Dr. Schubiner. So in our little moderator group, we're like, what is Curable doing? Why are they talking about it like this? Because what we want to see is that foods are safe and that inflammation is really regulated by the nervous system. So stress causes inflammation way more than a food does. But when you believe that food is going to be bad for you, you can have stress and you can have pain. Now, Dr. Schubiner talks a lot about inflammation. He says we all have inflammation in our bodies. That is a normal thing. It doesn't cause pain. So foods do not cause pain. We don't have to worry about inflammation like being the source of the pain, because when we calm and regulate the nervous system, that's what controls inflammation. So you could eat the cleanest diet from a lot of stress and still create, those things in your body like reduced immunity and inflammation and contracted muscle. Like in survival states, your inflammation is going to be higher if you're chronically in them.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
that is a method that is a lot more calming to people, is to not be so fearful of everything they're eating and to start having more relaxation and trust with, like I was talking about with Renee, that you can eat, a normal American diet or normal diet or whatever. Like you don't have to go to the extreme and only eat junk food, but I don't think any of us crave that. None of us
Right.
really want that. But if we have one slice of birthday cake, not to be like, oh, I'm going to pay for this later. Notice any of those kind of thoughts you have, and just know that, Dr. Schubiner is very adamant. Food does not cause pain. I had, that was just a huge moment for me when I was in his training and he was saying stuff like that, because my issues that brought me here were also with food. And it really is believable that food causes pain. And it's really scary to, not think that. But, the more, when people start believing that and that things are safe, they eat foods without pain.
Okay. Well, that's good to know.
Yeah.
So, and where can I find more of the Dr. Schubner information,
Yeah.
and can I email him?
Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully he doesn't mind, but I've heard of people emailing him and he responds. And like I said, Lisa, I'm sorry, I'm gonna put that down here. Lisa Brannigan is a moderator and she works with him. Don't bug her too much, but I don't want them to be like, what did you do? But if you don't get a hold of him, so Unlearn Your Pain is his book. It is awesome. Really, really good. It has a ton of research and then workbooks, a whole, process of releasing anger, and a 28-day workbook.
Which workbooks?
It's all in there. It's just called Unlearn Your Pain.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I think he has stuff on his website.
Okay.
Is it Freedom from Chronic Pain? He has really good videos on YouTube too. He has some really good cartoon videos. So yeah, and he gives lectures all around, but yeah, probably for you, just seeing what he has to say directly, because yours is such a different case. I haven't really talked to anyone who's had like actual bone-on-bone arthritis like that in 3 places. So it'd be interesting to see what he says. But like I said, I've heard him say, even if you have cancer, why not use some of these methods, right? Like, it's not like
That makes sense.
an either or kind of thing. Like it either works for pain or it doesn't. Like it works for all kinds of pain, but you might just not get to like 100% out of chronic pain.
Okay.
But
Thank
the
you very
surgery
much.
could be that path of least resistance and then healing from that. And, you know, a lot of people regain their motion and function after all those surgeries. I was a PT for 20 years. So cleaning up your thoughts about like the outcomes of the surgery and even visualization and having positive thoughts about the surgeries, not catastrophizing, your surgery will go better, you'll heal better.
Okay.
Because there's research showing that if you catastrophize pain, you will, you're more likely to have complications and longer recovery after surgery.
Okay.
So that will all help.
Okay. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
You're welcome. And then, oh, the PRT practitioner training. Yes, I was thinking of that. If you, well, yeah, you were asking about Dr. Schubiner. If you are a practitioner, which I don't know what he means by that exactly. I was a PT and a coach when I did it, but that is a really good education. She has 2 questions about 2 patients, if that's okay. If other people have questions, let them go. Okay, and what's the PRT practitioner training? Sorry, I'm just reading the chat if you're wondering why I'm mumbling a little. And then Carol says, unlearn your depression and anxiety is also very good. Yeah, what I've heard is like the beginning part is different because he talks more about, the research and stuff for depression and anxiety specifically, but then the treatment part and the workbook is also the same because you treat all of these things the same way. So that's a good point because, you might have this diagnosis with bone arthritis, but then have anxiety type symptoms on top of it because of the diagnosis. So, just the fact that you can unlearn your depression and anxiety shows you that, there's multiple layers of what's going on and not all that pain is just from the structural.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, the exercises are the same. And let's see. Do you say your name, Joshin? I think you had your hand raised and put it down. Okay. The questions about patients, I have a little hesitancy answering that on these calls just because like that person isn't here to ask directly. Just generally in coaching, we do that if it's like, I have a question on someone I'm coaching or whatever, but I am kind of curious too. It might be just kind of general principles. So with that in mind, yeah, I'm open to answering that, or you can also email me. And then we do have Sarah that's raised her hand. And sorry if I was saying your name wrong. I'm saying Joshin. Joshin? Yeah. Okay. But Sarah, if you want to, is that you? How do you say it?
Jochen.
Jochen. Oh, okay. Hi.
Sorry, it's Dutch.
I know. I was like, I haven't seen that written out or heard that ever before. So where are you from?
From the Netherlands.
Oh, nice. Okay. Okay. So yeah, since you're here, what do you think about the questions with the other?
Yeah, and I think it's quite things that can apply to other people as well.
Oh, okay.
So that might be interesting.
Okay.
So one is about a thing that I come up regularly is that's a patient who has knee pain. It sounds pretty easy, but he had surgery about 20 years ago and his knee was injured and he lost, something was fixed. And now since then he's saying that he cannot run stairs and he cannot walk for more than 20 minutes or something, or ride his bike for more than 10 minutes. So now he has a sort of training plan for himself that he walks every day for 10 minutes and he rides his bike for 10 minutes, and that's all okay. But when it's a bit longer, then it's getting a problem. And I really can't convince him that his pain is probably neuroplastic. Because he says, yeah, no, it's when I do 10 minutes, it's okay. But when 11 minutes, then my knee gets sore because of more pressure and more tension or something. And that's his mindset. And I can just not convince him.
Are you're
I
coaching
think it's
him,
really,
or is he
sorry?
is he coming to you for like physical therapy or for coaching or for
Oh, I'm an occupational therapist. Sorry.
oh, your occupation?
Yeah.
In the mindset of like, is he a PRT person? You know what I mean? Does he know about this stuff? And
Yeah, he knows about his stuff and he studied
does.
into it. He read the way out and
Yeah. Oh, he did.
applied it to other stuff, but about his knee, there's no discussion.
Huh.
And the only thing I can think of, like when I will run, I can run for 1 minute and that's okay. But after more minutes, I get more fatigued and I get more higher breath and stuff. So I can relate to his idea about if you do something longer, then more things happen in the body. You know, that's quite normal. But in his case, I want to get him out of the idea.
Yeah. Okay. So again, it would be really nice to have him here, but it sounds like he's kind of coming to you in the medical capacity, and he has some knowledge, but even just that, like, convincing is just like, it's such a hard way to go about it, right? Like,
yeah,
how can I convince him? I mean, I would definitely just call that predictive coding, and he could look to be the detective for the opposite, but it sounds like he has a lot of years of programming of like, this is exactly what I can do. But like, you know, what we sometimes find is predictive coding with sitting. And so someone sits to watch a movie and doesn't have that pain. And then that's very easy to say like, oh, did you see that? So it's going to be a little harder for someone who has basically his, you know, reticular activating system in his brain is like, this is what happens. And then my guess is, my strong suspicion is he's producing those symptoms, that it's not a structural thing. Because if it's not a structural thing, it's not a structural thing. Like, we're just not going to go there. And, you know, even with someone who runs for 1 minute and has those effects, like, it might be possible that they're, you know, running to catch a bus and they do that and they don't feel those things. So there's so much to our predictive coding that we can feel like we're just telling it like it is. But when someone tells me, you know, I stand up and as soon as I bear weight here, I can feel this catch, I'm like, you're already telling me, you know, like, you're just telling me how much predictive coding you have, because you're not even giving it a chance to try it. You already know what's going to happen. So I like to just, for myself, when I notice that predictive coding, just to be like, it's possible it won't happen this time. And maybe he's open to that. It doesn't sound like he is, but that's how I would go about it. It's just like, it's possible it won't happen this time. Because so many times I've even just thinking that, you know, I'm starting to do like maybe some exercises where I feel my arms burn, and instead of thinking I'm going to be so sore tomorrow, I think maybe I won't even be sore tomorrow. And then I'm not. But if he was open, another thing could be graded exposure. Graded exposure, it's a little weird with time limits, but you could actually just imagine that you're running and you're running 11 minutes and you're running 15 minutes, and just walk him through that and see what happens. Because he might actually, even just imagining it, he might start to get some awareness, some tightness, some actual pain. Then you can be like, okay, that's obviously mind body. So it's, you know, when I was like integrating as a physical therapist, trying to help my patients and, you know, just like teach them, and it really doesn't, you know, it's hard, but not everyone is accepting of the information. And no matter how lovely you present it to them, you know, they're like,
and this
well,
is
this
also an
pain is
example.
from the surgery, you know?
Yeah, like he had a very clear diagnosis and he had the surgery. So it's a bit easier when there's no diagnosis, say, you know, there's no structural issue, but he actually had a structural issue, but it's 20 years ago,
It's
you know,
20
so
years
it
ago.
shouldn't hurt anymore, right? So
If you did an MRI of my body, I bet you'd find at least 5 different things that could be, you know, considered a chronic pain diagnosis. I'm so tempted to just go and have a private MRI. You can get them for like under $1,000. And I'm like, just so I could tell you guys, like, I do have this herniated disc or whatever, because I'm pretty sure, like, but I'm also scared because I'm like, once I have that diagnosis, I think my brain will, and even though I know all this information, there's that little bit of fear of like, I can see how my body already reacts when you guys talk about your pain and I feel it. But again, it's just, so yeah, that's a hard one. And almost everyone, the more I moderate and the more I see like hundreds of questions or whatever, just more and more, almost everyone was like, but mine was actually structural because, in 2001, I had a car accident. I'm like, that's 22 years ago though.
Yeah.
So it's not structural anymore. Like, okay, I'll rephrase that. You have a structural thing, but structural things don't cause pain. Not all structural things cause pain. We just know that. There was this crazy study that I'll share with you guys because I haven't found it in that research. I just found it on my own. They did a study of young, healthy athletes. So they're people in their peak performance, they're athletes, they're young, and they're pain-free. 89% of them had a hip labral tear. Pain-free athletes. So they're probably like what, in their 20s, then maybe someday in their 40s, they have a lot of stress at their job, start feeling hip pain, go in, oh, hip labral tear, oh my gosh, surgery. And little did they know they've been living with it pain-free for 20 years. It was just under the stress that they manifest pain in that area of their body and then found this normal anomaly. So even people who've had, there have been people who've had whole rods up and down their spine, that surgery, the Harrington rods, who can get out of pain, even with all of that hardware in there. It's not the hardware causing the pain. It's not the scar tissue. It's not the fascia. You know what I mean? Maybe the fascia because the brain controls it. But, if it's been 20 years, that's not.
Yeah.
And he's
Thanks
not.
for your view on this.
Okay. Yes.
The other question was about migraines, but please let's maybe if there's someone else. I don't know how much time you had.
I know. I am just like, I don't know. I'm not looking at the time very much and I'm just talking and talking, but I kind of like it. So hopefully it's.
So if someone else has a private question, please let them go first. And if we have time, then I can ask.
Let's do that. Okay.
All right,
Awesome.
cool. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. Okay, Sarah, you're next.
Thank you very much.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
I'm sorry. I
had to
unmute.
Oh, yeah.
I have had glute pain, actually lower back pain, and I was placed probably eight years ago. I had an accident and had the MRI and the x-rays, and they found out that I had saw that I had a herniated disc. I went through therapy. Therapy worked. I had no more discomfort. Yes, wonderful.
Yeah.
Then I went through losing my father. And a very stressful situation at work came up. And not until I read Alan Gordon's The Way Out book did I realize that that's when my pain came back. Is when I lost my father, and then when I had a very stressful situation at work and left my job.
Yeah.
And ever since then, I have had on and off pain, lower back pain. So knowing that it's been on and off, I know it's neuroplastic.
Yes.
And then I have had a pain in my glute where my hip and my thigh meet, right down under my where my glute how do I want to say, folds into the,
Yeah.
causes your bum.
Yeah.
And I, for the life of me, cannot get it to overcome.
So that one, is that a different pain? The new glute one? Did you say that's new?
No, I've had it.
Oh, you've had it before. Okay.
Before.
And the lower back. They were both kind of together. Okay.
But the lower back pain comes and goes. So I know that one
Oh, okay.
is completely neuroplastic.
I see what you're saying. So the
I've
glute,
had
feel like it's more
acupuncture.
constant.
Yeah, I've had the glute pain is constant 24/7, 365 for the last 5 years.
Okay. And is there any variance in the pain that you've noticed? Like,
Yes, there
okay,
is.
so how would you describe that? Like,
Sometimes it's a very I put the word, and I don't use the 4-letter word. It starts with a P.
yeah.
I use different words when I talk about it, or when I think of it, and I call it pressure. It's a pressure sensation.
Okay.
And for probably about, when I read Alan's book, I started doing somatic tracking. And for about a week, the pain had disappeared.
In the glute?
Yes.
Oh, so it's neuroplastic.
Yeah, I know it is.
Oh, I thought you were saying you didn't know if the glute pain was because
No,
it's
I know
constant
it
for
is.
5 years.
But my question is,
wait, hold on. Even
Okay.
just saying it's constant for 5 years, do you see how that's like kind of a lie? And
yes,
not true and dramatic and like,
it's
uh,
my mind, I know, or I tell myself it's neuroplastic,
yeah,
but
it is.
that pressure is still that pressure.
Okay. That changed everything for me right there. When you said you read that book, it was gone for a week. I don't know what more evidence you could have. Like, that is the best news ever. And so now it's just a matter of like getting that fear under control. Cause a lot of us do that. We'll actually like feel good for a little while. And it's like almost too good to be true. Or it's like the lottery winners that don't know what to do with all their money. And the next thing you know, they're broke again. You're just like, oh, I feel so good. And then you're like, oh, the pain is back. Now I don't know what to do, anymore. But that's so good to know that it was gone for a week.
And it's my question is how, I guess the only way to say is it's at the top of my mind 24/7, 360. I mean, it's constant. It's a constant.
Think about that too. I don't want to be like, you're wrong, but I do want to just like gently like challenge that. Okay. Because
I understand that.
Because there might be a time, what we know from Lorimer Mosley, who's a pain researcher, is that pain is in the consciousness. And so we want to really remember that, because it's not like the pain is there and we ignore it. When we're not thinking about it and we're thinking of something else, the brain isn't producing it. So we want to train, like I was telling someone earlier, I remember, to shift your focus, right? We want to just shift, like direct the brain's focus to things on purpose and notice how good they feel, or that they're better, or that you're, you know what I mean? Just even a little glimmer of a moment that you're not thinking about it. Because that's a pretty one-track mind if you're literally always thinking about the pain 24/7, 365. But I'm guessing like when you're distracted and busy, like, and then there's nothing else going on, the pain comes. That's a common thing I hear. How is it for you? Like I said, I don't want to put words in your mouth or discredit what you're saying. So tell me how that lands.
Well, I also have read Dr. Schubner's Unlearn Your Pain.
Okay.
And I went through all the anger, the grief, and all of those practices.
Well, good.
I found, and this is only my personal experience, I found the somatic tracking that Alan walks you through. And I've
Mhm.
also been listening to his and Alon's old podcast.
Yeah, that's a great one.
And I find that is more at times helpful,
Oh, good.
but
Yeah.
then I be doing it, and I'm wondering if, because I'm doing it so often, I'm over my
You'll-
brain
Oh,
brain
sorry.
is not taking it as,
Yeah, I think you'll know by how you feel, and just moment to moment, is this more kind of relaxing to me, or is this more,
I
fear
think because
generating?
I'm doing it so often, I'm frustrated, and the
Okay.
frustration then
Yeah.
causes that pain,
Yeah.
that pressure to
Yes.
be
Yes.
more intense and
Yes.
continue on. And there, when it continues on, my brain is I'm constantly, and it could be, I'm constantly worried about it.
It could
But I
be.
know I know it's not, I know it's all in
Okay.
my head.
Yeah.
I mean, it's in my
Yeah,
brain.
and even if saying it that way just feels a little rough to you, you don't have to say it that way. I never really use that term, but if you like it, it's fine. But even just saying it's mind body, or it's stress related, or this is mind body syndrome, that's how Dr. Schubiner phrases it. Or
Well, it's like he says one of the statements to say to yourself is,
Yeah.
I have MBS and I'm curing myself.
Yeah, he does. He's like, and you could say it like a mantra. So you guys listening, like, if you're resonating with what she says and you're like, yeah, I want to listen to those podcasts, there's no right answer here. And I think what a lot of us get worried about is like, am I doing it wrong? If I'm having a symptom and it's not going away, like, should I be doing something different?
Am I giving it too much attention?
Yeah. So what I would say is, it's not so much about what you're doing, it's how you're feeling. And so, if you're giving it attention and you're fearing it and you're hopeless and it's frustrating, and then absolutely those are the kind of things that, if you're drawing your attention to it every time you meditate, I would say go for a bike ride or do something else. If bike rides hurt, don't do that. But, watch your favorite show without guilt, like something like, I've really used watching a show or listening to a podcast to change my emotional state and get my mind on something else, because thinking your way out of it is really hard when you're, in that situation.
Exactly. And
So-
that's what I
Yeah. So sometimes less is more.
I'm overthinking it.
Yeah.
And therefore my brain is thinking, oh, you're silly. This is what you're trying to do is not working,
Mhm. Yeah. So it sounds like, if you know the nervous system, and if you guys want some basics of the nervous system, I have some really good videos for free. If you ever, wherever you follow me, I have links to my free nervous system videos on my website and stuff. But like, it sounds like you're going from flight, which is like, or sometimes combining these states or alternating between flight and freeze. And flight is like, I've got to be perfect at this, and I've got to do all the right things. And if I do all the right things and I have perfect posture and I fix all the problems, then I'll feel better. It's this urgency about like doing more and doing it right. And, and then freeze is like, it's hopeless. It's not going to work. I'm not good enough, or something's wrong with me, or I'm just not able to do the work right, or something's physically wrong. You didn't say that, but like, with maybe my brain is just not able to do it or whatever. So flight and freeze, you can alternate between them or be combined. And sometimes the energy is kind of like immobilized and you have all these desires to do these things. But I promise you, the way out is not by doing more. It's not by reading the perfect book. It's following what feels good to you. And
trust the process.
Yeah, trust the process. And for a lot of people, they find that doing less and doing things that actually focus on living and things they enjoy, and taking up a new hobby, not in a pressure-filled way. I used to do that. I'd be like, for my relaxation time, I'll buy an instrument and learn it. I'm like, that's not relaxing. Relaxing is like taking a nap. Like take more naps, have more fun, be in those like more positive vibration moods, because that is the parasympathetic calm state. Your number one job, everyone, all of ours, when we're regulating our nervous system and teaching our brain not to produce the pain, is to get into, I'm safe, this is okay, the parasympathetic calm state. Then the brain produces less pain. It's not about the exercises we do. It's not about the foods we eat. It's not about how many books we read or how long we meditate. It's about our feeling about those things. So if you can just have the feeling of good things and do less, why not do that? You know, does that make sense?
Yeah. And I think one of the things that I read yesterday was it's saying if you're obsessing on meditation, you're doing too much. You're not helping. You're not helping yourself.
Feel it in your body. Yeah, exactly. That is the hardest thing about this process, is it's not one size fits all. And even for myself, I'm doing different things, you know, 5 years into it than I did the first year. So if someone's like, well, how did you do it? What works for you? I could say, well, I started with this and then I did this and this. But the real answer is I started tuning into my body instead of listening to all the resources out there and getting confused with the different diets and the different protocols and how many minutes you journal and how many, you know, what time of day, and started tuning into myself and you know, prioritizing my emotions over, you know, what other people are expecting of me, things like that. So we haven't even on this call talked about those personality traits associated with chronic pain, but like some of it is our belief, and, you know, believing things are structural can cause more pain. Having fear can cause more pain, but even the way that we're reacting to ourselves and some of those personality traits of perfectionism and not having boundaries with people and people pleasing, like those kind of things can trigger our nervous system to activate those neural pathways that cause that chronic pain. So if you've been through Dr. Schubner's book, I know you've looked at all of those areas. He goes in so in depth to your childhood and how your parents and family relations were. And I mean, it is like deep. I actually got stuck in it for a while because I was like, whoa, this is a lot to like, I don't think I can do it 28 days in a row, because it was like a lot of emotional work.
That was exactly my I got partially through it and I thought, this is too deep for me. I can't do that. And then that's when I went back to Alan's. Telling myself I'm safe. There's no structural damage. I've been repaired. I'm in a safe place. I can relax.
Do things that show that to your body. So that's what I like to add, you know, like add, you know, for sure have the thought work and, you know, messages of safety. And then what I love teaching about this work is like, you can have more fun. You can do those things like, you know, go to the bakery you love and get that pastry you want, you know what I mean? Like in a loving way. Just if you ask your nervous system, what I like to do is just put my hands on my heart and just say like, what do you need, love? Right? I know I'm dysregulated. I check in and then I'm just like, what do you need, love? Because sometimes I might want something, you know, soothing. And sometimes I might want something more activating. So if I check in with myself moment to moment, then I always am building that communication with myself. And I'm also, you know, kind of getting to know personally what kinds of things work for me. And I'm not rigid about like, okay, you know, if I have any kind of dysregulation, this is the one thing I always do. And that's the only way to handle it. Because like now I've started dancing, and that's one way that I love to regulate my nervous system, which I never did years ago, you know, so just being open to like, these things can change from person to person and even from myself day to day.
Right.
And that's the beauty of it.
I've noticed after reading Alan's book, and I highly recommend buying the audio book of Alan's book, because his inflection in in reading it to you,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
absorb so much more.
Yeah.
But
But you know what, Janet, I've heard people say, Dr. Schubiner has some meditations on his website, I think. And I think you get them when you buy the book. So maybe they're not just general ones, but and he has no music or anything. And they're like, your voice is so hypnotic. And so find what works for you. And actually, you can even think of it as kind of this like playground of like, I'm learning what works for me and I'm following my intuition. And I used to listen to some podcasts a few years ago that I don't really listen to now. And now I listen to Abraham Hicks, which is like so different, but every time I listen to it, I feel better. So follow that breadcrumb trail for you. And yes, Alan, a lot of people resonate with him and love him. And he does have that like hypnotic voice.
mhm.
And it's totally fine to stick with that. If you like that, just listen to that. And then if you're like, I heard about this person and I keep hearing about this, and maybe I'll check this out, or something pops up on your screen and you just feel like, oh, I'll try that. But there's no right answer here. You're not doing it wrong if you only listen to one source. You're not doing it wrong if you, do less.
Well, some of the stuff that Dr. Schubner, through that 28 days, some of the stuff where he talks about going back to pain and stress, emotional pain
Yeah.
and stress that you encountered back in your childhood, and yelling at them,
Mm-hmm.
and telling them how much you hate them or that you want to punch them, and just, letting it all out. That part really helped me in the emotional stress letdown.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
I felt so much better yelling at these. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
driving down the street yelling at these people.
Yeah. It's so
And-
weird. Yeah. But they call it healthy aggression, and it's a way
But
out
it
of
was
freeze.
wonderful.
Yeah. It helps you. It helps your pain.
And
Yeah.
I was able to release my anger towards a family member for what they had done to me years and years ago. So
Yeah.
it was
So
just, it's
yeah.
not at the top of my head anymore.
Good. Yes.
Saying,
And someone in the chat had said, we were talking about the book and just a little while ago having second thoughts. So hopefully, keep it in mind that it's not like it's a bad book for you. If it, kind of brings up these things, it might just be one
There's
you do at a certain time or
yes.
place.
Yes,
right?
there's portions of it that really, really helped me.
Yeah. And you
But other
don't have to be
portions-
perfectionistic about reading
Right.
that book and finishing the workbook, like do what works for you. And that's the whole message of this whole process is anytime you're looking outside of yourself for what should I do, you're probably in flight. And when you're turning inward, that's where you're going to actually have your best results.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I appreciate your help, Betsy.
Aw.
I'm not mentally blowing up.
Good. Okay. Well, thank you. And, trust the process and any of those things that feel relaxing. And, like I said, you're kind of, it's like you're, we want to get more in that parasympathetic calm state. So I think of decreasing the stressors and decreasing the ways of thinking that are causing more pain. And then also like showing your body it's safe, showing your brain it's safe. So those are like adding in those peaceful, loving things, like maybe you pet your dog or, but like shifting your focus to what feels good instead of just what feels bad.
Okay.
And that will make a huge
I have one
difference.
last question.
Okay.
What is your opinion on using essential oils to help you get into that parasympathetic
Yeah.
realm?
I think if it feels good to you and you like it, then they're great. I love thinking of things like that as placebos. Like I tell my brain when I'm taking a peppermint pill for my stomach, I'm like, here's this placebo I'm taking. So for me, that resonates to just like, I think of it as supporting my nervous system, right? Because we don't have to do everything with just our mind. Like
Right.
our mind is super powerful and we can do everything with our mind, I think, but why not have those external supports, right? Like, why not use whatever technology we do have that feels good and supportive? But we also don't want to send the message to the brain of like, with essential oils, it might not be that, but someone maybe like,
that in order to calm down, you have to have that.
yeah, exactly. Or I mean, just being like, okay, well, I like this and it helps, but it's not the oil that is,
I enjoy the scent. It
actually,
calms me.
yeah, exactly. And I love thinking of all the different rich ways that you can enjoy that parasympathetic calm state. So it could be through touch. And what are the different ways of touch? Oh, connection and intimacy is actually a really good way to get into that flow state, like use that more if that calls to you. Or, I've gone through phases of EFT tapping, and I don't even maybe call it a placebo. It's just like there's bottom up approaches and there's top down approaches and there's mixes of approaches. So, the oils might be more of a bottom up approach, but, it's not like I have to have this. I just don't want ever people to be like, I have to go buy this expensive thing in order to feel better, or I can't feel better unless I have this certain oil. But if it assists you, if it feels loving, if you like having it and it's like fun to smell, do it. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
All right. I appreciate your time and thank you very much. And I enjoy your website. Thank you so
my
much.
Pleasure. Great. All right. We have Carol next.
Hi, Betsy and
Hi,
everybody.
Carol, good to see you.
My question is just about predictive coding, and if you could elaborate a little bit more on that idea. I feel like that's a strategy I need to know more about.
Is there a certain thing you're dealing with that maybe like I do a certain movement and I have pain, or I eat a certain food and have pain?
No, it's more it's weird. It feels weird to say this, but I feel like I have a fear of fear. It's like
totally.
I've been able to, I have made wonderful progress on my physical symptoms.
Yay! Woo! Let's celebrate that first of all.
Turn them off, which is,
Yay!
I was so shocked the first time I did it that then my next thought was, oh my God, I'm going to undermine myself because I'm so surprised.
Yes, yeah. That's true.
And it was just messages of safety.
Yeah.
And
Good.
I have a lot of GI issues and irritable bowel kind of stuff. And I just was able to shut off, cramps. I mean, like abdominal cramps and nausea. I mean, it was wonderful. And, and dizziness, my dizziness is gone, and so all those things. Yeah. So I really made I'm really happy with the progress. But I find that, and so fatigue was and reading, the Facebook posts and stuff that you do and Lisa does, it's like, it never occurred to me that fatigue was also a mind-body symptom.
Right.
And I said it, and then I was like, so here I am. So now I'm back in the gym and I'm looking at everything I'm doing in a day and thinking, I just ran around for 4 hours straight. What made me think that I can't do this? And so some of it was actually, I know we shouldn't get into rigid tracking, but to be able to go back and look at my day and then add up what all I did that day, it was like, I don't even know why I'm worried about fatigue now, but the interesting thing is though, when so I have an event coming up in the future, something fun, something that I will enjoy, but I always have that little feeling of dread. And so then it's like, well, now I feel like I'm fearing fear.
Yes.
And that's got to be part of that hypervigilance, and I thought predictive coding is just a term I'd heard earlier this week, but I really would like to hear more.
Yeah. Okay. So just in general, predictive coding is that shortcut that the brain takes so that it's faster. And one example is like in our body, when we're thirsty, like if our cells are dehydrated, we'll get that signal for drinking water. And it takes 20 minutes for our cells to actually get hydrated. But when we drink water, the thirst signal turns off because our brain knows you drink water, the cells are going to get their water. And so it turns off the thirst signal, right? That's an example of predictive coding. Or it might be, every time I sit for 20 minutes, I get pain, or on this type of chair, I get pain, or with this movement or this food, those are all, it just takes, I've noticed my brain do it after 1 or 2 times of something happening, it makes this connection. And I've seen it in little ways too. Like I, one time got this certain like popcorn ball at a gas station, and I go to that gas station again and I'm like, craving that popcorn ball, like just, you know what I mean? It's just like one of those like subconscious connections our brain makes to try to quote unquote make our life easier. But what it can do is start to, create pain with movement long after the body has healed. So it's like, I bent over and had an injury and I bent over and it hurt. And then years later, my brain is still saying, well, bending over is going to hurt. And so it predicts and creates that pain, even though there's no reason for it to still be hurting.
So it's a little bit of catastrophizing.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like, well, I already know, like I'm trying to think of other real world examples because it happens there too, where we're like, if I tell him this, he's going to be so mad. And so like the way we tell him, we're, like gearing for it. And my daughter will do this with me because she'll be like, you were so mad. And I was like, I wasn't mad, but I think she interpreted it as mad because she thought I would be mad. You know what I mean? It's just like weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of a storyline.
Yes.
Going on.
Yeah. It's just kind of like, I think I mentioned the reticular activating system is just like this part of your brain that creates the storyline and then it just backs it up. And so if you have the story that every morning I wake up, I have pain, then every morning that happens, you remember it. And if there was one morning you were on vacation and that didn't happen, you forget about it. You gloss over it. You just like, your brain's
Right.
like, that information is not relevant. We will not pick it up. It just doesn't even see it basically. So it's that. And then, we can work backwards from knowing like, if I am having some of those symptoms and it's predictable and it's this time of day, or it's with this smell, or it's with lights, or it's with wind, then we can get super curious and be that detective for the opposite. And that's the solution for every kind of predictive. Well, sorry, that's not the only solution. One solution for all this predictive coding is that detective for the opposite, where you're really like, in a movie where a detective is like writing down every clue, like that kind of detective where you get a notebook and you're like, because this happened to me now that I'm like monitoring my thoughts all the time and thinking about this stuff. I was having back pain. And then I noticed I was like in the curbside pickup and I just like, was helping the lady and grabbed my dog food and put it in. And I was like, wait, my back didn't even hurt then. Cause I was like in the moment and with a person and didn't want to look, subconsciously, whatever, right? Like my back didn't produce the pain. My brain didn't produce the pain. I didn't feel it in my back.
Right.
So
it's like thinking I can't go to a 4-hour event.
Yeah.
And the next 2 days, the 2 days after that.
Yes. Oh,
I did that day and I was literally out running constantly for 4 hours. And I thought, why? And at the event, all I'd be doing is sitting.
yes.
Nice
Yes.
kind of thing. And I thought,
yes.
what was the storyline? Yeah.
Yes.
So
I'm glad you brought that up too, because even like so many of us have predictive coding of, maybe I don't feel it now while I'm doing it, but I'm going to pay for it later. Oh, that is the worst one because it feels so real. We have so much evidence of it, but like, just notice when you're telling yourself that it might be different this time. It maybe already has been different, but one time or, for a period of time, it was really bad and your brain remembers that. So we want to just, start to be aware of these thoughts. The other really good thing for predictive coding is graded exposure, where if you had a fear situation, like, do you have a situation that you're thinking about that's coming up, that situation, does that produce fear? You're
Yeah,
afraid of
it's
having the
those,
fear?
it's those situations you can,
Yeah.
that consider trapped, like you're
Yeah.
in a
Trapped.
meeting and you got to be there for a couple hours, and
Yeah.
you feel like if you have to get up and walk around or have to get up and leave for a few minutes, that somehow that's going to be embarrassing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nobody will probably even notice, but
Right.
not care,
Yeah. So we could
Yes,
do.
a storyline about how embarrassing this will be, right? And how difficult.
So if you want to do this, we could use you as an example for a little graded exposure of working on fear. And Sarah says, I'm with you, Carol, fear of the fear. And you know what? It's so normal. I actually see this a lot where people's physical symptoms go down and then it's like their anxiety increases. So that's just what Sarno would call a symptom imperative, or what they call in this context, an extinction burst, where it's like you said, that hypervigilance
Right.
the brain had a chew toy over here and you took away that chew toy. So now it's like, well, let me just start creating more problems to think about and fear. And yeah, so that's all that's going
the
on.
trigger for me that I did not see coming is just like I may just be at the mall, or the first, like I'm back in the gym, but when my heart rate goes up, start feeling
Yes.
like that, that alarm's going off, like, be careful, be careful. And it's like, and there's nothing dangerous going on.
Yeah.
But
So it's like your cognitive mind even knows, but there's, this panic that occurs when a certain symptom is felt in the body. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well, let's just do a little imagining of that. So go ahead and close your eyes and get as comfortable as you can. You can lean back into your chair if you can, and just so you're not having to hold yourself up, and starting to tune into the breath, just noticing the breath, and notice how it might feel good in certain ways to breathe. Maybe it feels good to take a deep breath in or out. Maybe you can just start kind of noticing that heart rate and how that is right now. And for graded exposure, if you're doing this along and you want to do it on like a motion not an emotion. Well, we're doing this on an emotion. You could do it on a physical motion as well, but you would just have that in mind of a food you're going to eat, or how you would imagine moving, or something that you want to train your brain. This is safe. Okay. So, but for you, Carol, we're going to focus on that heart rate and how it's feeling right now. How would you describe that?
It's I would say somewhere in the middle. I don't feel completely relaxed, but I don't feel, like I do when I'm at the gym working out, or I'm walking someplace, quickly.
Okay, so let's try just a little relaxation real quick. Maybe you can, here's another technique. We did the passing the thing from hand to hand. And for this one, you can actually open your eyes. I just did a little video on this yesterday. Just a little calming technique you can do is look off into the distance and find something to focus on. So not the computer screen, but maybe something on the wall behind, or something out the window, and focus on that object and feel how your eyes there's some tension there as you focus. And when we're in that high alert, that's the state even our eyes are in, kind of this tension and focus and narrow vision. So what we want to do now is just keep the eyes there, and then imagine expanding your view and softening the gaze so that you see more of what's in the periphery. You could even have your hands up like that and keep your eyes straight ahead as you expand, moving your hands out to the side, and see if you can still see them. And you could even imagine that you can see behind yourself. You're kind of be able to keep your eyes there and sense above and below and behind. Just softening, opening. And how does that feel, Carol, now that you?
Much more open.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
more
Okay.
open and relaxed stance.
Okay.
Like I'm actually kind of gathering. It's kind of the namaste.
Oh,
thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I love that. So how's the heart feeling?
Oh, much, much better. I mean,
Mhm.
much better, much lower. And yeah, it just feels very natural, actually. It feels very centering.
So that's kind of cool to know that you can do that. What did that take? 2 minutes maybe at the most?
Right.
And the vision one is cool because you can do that in a group. Like people don't even have to know that you're doing it during a meeting. You don't have to do it with your hands. They might think that's a little weird, but who cares? But you don't even have to do it with your hands is my point. Not what other people think. Who cares?
You could actually just lay them out on the table.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Have the other one just nobody would.
Yes, exactly. So just like these little tricks, that's one of the somatic ways that you can just cue your brain instead of trying to logic your way out of it. Oh, I shouldn't feel this. Why is this happening? There's nothing to be afraid of. You're like actually just like softening the gaze, which shifts your nervous system state out of the high alert state to the open, expansive rest and repair state.
Mhm.
So,
and it helps me, Betsy, so much to look at. So I'm glad we had this conversation.
yeah.
The predictive coding as fueled by a storyline.
Yes,
Because
absolutely.
I have a mindfulness practice, meditation and mindfulness practice. And being aware of the storyline is so huge in that.
Yes.
I have a lot of practice that way.
Yes, so good. And if anyone does, even if it's not mind body stuff and you're getting coached, that's what it is all about all the time too. There's so much that I think is real and it's my storyline. And I talked to the person who said that and they're like, I didn't even mean it that way. You know what I mean? Like our brain makes so many assumptions. And if they're serving you, that's fine. And if they're not, let's examine them because chances are they're not really true.
And they're stirring up emotions.
They are. Yeah. Okay. So there's one analogy like I want to do with you and everyone, because I think this is a way, it's kind of like titrating, where titrating is in chemistry, where instead of just adding two elements together, you're just like adding it drop by drop until it has the reaction, right? Instead of blowing it up, you're just like one drop at a time. So we want to do that with our sensations or with fear. We could do it with, pain, or we could do it with fear. But what we can do is just think about in this time that we're together and calm and not in that situation, introducing a little bit of that fear feeling and also having this safe container for it to be able to like hold that space for both, right? So let's have you close your eyes and I want you to, everyone who's playing along, this is a nice metaphor, kind of meditation analogy. So when you're getting into that flight mode, if you're feeling apprehensive or fearful, I want you to imagine that the top of your body, the like lungs and heart area, it's like a tree that's in the wind and the branches are shaking and the leaves are rustling and, kind of maybe thinking of that fear and that heart rate and how that feels like turbulence or anxiety or, kind of like danger, right? That maybe the leaves are really shaking and the branches are even moving and swaying. But then I want you to imagine that down in your trunk is the trunk of the tree. And so I want you to shift your focus down into this part that's stable. And as you notice a tree's trunk, a lot of times that doesn't even move at all. It's actually rooted and the roots actually get stronger in the wind. So it's like grounding down and it's steady and it's solid and it's stable and there's no danger in that trunk of the tree. Even though as you shift back up and look back up at those branches again, there's that turbulence. There's that, quick breathing, there's the fast heart rate, but you can be that observer of it. You can just see those branches rustling. Oh, there's some wind. There's something that's like a little bit of, like, I want to say it like resistance that's like making me stronger, right? Like there's this challenge that like, it feels really scary, but it's actually strengthening me at this root level, right? It's actually like not dangerous at all. And it's part of how I grow. And it's totally fine to have that wind. It's fine to feel that emotion. And I also can shift back down to this place that feels also, strong, rooted, grounded, safe, solid, protected. Can you imagine yourself now in that situation? You're sitting, it's 4 hours, starting to feel the fear, and how you might handle that.
Mhm. Absolutely.
How did that go for you?
Yeah. I like the eyedropper analogy too, that you
Yeah.
once in a while.
Yeah.
And you don't have to, you just notice that it's there, but you don't have to attend to it.
Yeah.
I mean, make sure the storyline doesn't spin off, but
Yeah.
with because hypervigilance, has really been it's what got me here.
Yeah. 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 And so your brain, on one hand doesn't feel safe to let that go, right? Like I want to be aware of all these things. So, just like my brain might tend to catastrophize and I say, oh, there's my brain catastrophizing. When I get that feeling in my body that feels like flight and I'm like, I know, like, oh, there's me being hypervigilant. And then it's just a thing that happens.
Yeah. And now when I'm at the gym, I know when my heart rate goes up, it's, I'm probably going to feel that moment
Yes.
of
Yes.
anxiety, but that doesn't mean anything's wrong.
Right.
Just that when my breathing quickens and my heart rate goes up, my brain interprets that as, whoa, we got
Yes.
something to be worried
Danger.
about.
Yes, exactly. Well, think about, I can't remember who said it, but they said, anxiety is excitement without the breath. So excitement, if you are like in love and you see your crush, your heart might go fast, your breathing might, but you're not like, oh no, now I have to go, to the doctor. You're like, oh my gosh, he just gave me butterflies in my stomach, like
Right.
those things don't have to be associated with something bad, but if we knowing like anxiety is excitement without the breath, you feel that same rush, just add some breath, add some breathing. And then you're like, okay, this actually feels a little bit like excitement now. This is like, and adding running is that good example of like stretch, but not stress. But we do want to stretch ourselves. We do want to expand a little. And that is what develops our capacity to hold and tolerate more. But it doesn't mean it's a bad thing. Yeah.
And that's what going to the gym, and I worked with a personal trainer now a couple of times.
Yeah.
That's what that experience has done, to me, and that the more I'm there, the more relaxed I become.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm not, it's now familiar.
Yeah.
It's routine,
Yeah.
It didn't feel that way in the beginning.
Yeah.
Good. But yeah. So, well, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And one last thing I'll say, just because from my own personal experience, is just watch how you're judging yourself about your reactions. Because like someone who's been doing this work for a while and you've had some good successes. And so then it might be easy to be like, oh, why is this one taking so long? Or how come you can't get this? Or what's wrong with you here? Or like, I like to think of the rule of thirds, because we get a little perfectionistic. A lot of us have those tendencies. So the rule of thirds is like a third of the time you'll be able to use your tools. It'll go exactly as you want. You do the somatic tracking, it goes away. You're just like, life is wonderful. This is exactly how it's supposed to work 100% of the time. No, it works like that a third of the time. A third of the time you try and you don't quite get the result you want, but at least you tried. And a third of the time you're just dysregulated and you just need a moment of compassion and you need to not be hard on yourself. And knowing that that can happen up to a third of the time as you're growing and expanding, that's part of it. So just notice if you are, you know, if there's any of those little traces of those old personality traits of beating yourself up or being hard on yourself still, they might crop up from time to time. I've learned.
Yes.
Okay.
All
Thank
right.
you. Awesome. Janet, we have you next. Thanks for waiting. This is awesome. You guys are so cool.
Hello.
Hello.
Oh boy, I can relate to so much stuff that everybody's been saying. I'm
Right?
writing notes. And then I
Yes,
think,
we have
"Oh,
the
I gotta
best,
say this."
like
Okay.
every question has been so good so far. Thanks, you
So
guys.
like, I think I have everything.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And
the
so,
hypervigilance, the fear, the everything.
Yeah.
So on so many, so I'll try to keep my story short,
okay.
but I wanted to let though, a couple of people know, like I did read or I am reading that, book, Unlearn Your Pain right now. I'm in the process of that.
Oh, awesome. And how's that
So-
going for you?
Pretty good. I wanted to say, he does say in there to pick and choose what you want,
Mhm.
from the book. You don't have to do everything that he's telling you to do.
Exactly. Yes.
So,
yes.
and being the person, the perfectionist and stuff like other people are, I'm a person I'm a rule follower and I tend to do everything. And he's, so that kind of makes it a little bit easier to have that permission, not to have to do everything,
Exactly. Yes.
because that's part of my problem is I do that's why I think what Sarah said, like maybe overly obsessed with all of this, because I'm doing,
Yes.
journal speak with Nicole Sachs. I listen
Yeah.
to podcast after podcast. I listen
Yeah.
to, I have the way out. I have all the books, everything, so,
Yeah.
and then
Okay.
my mind tends to go to people who say that they've been doing this for a while. And if they're still struggling, then I put that story on me. Like, see, they're not getting better,
Right.
and then that's going to be my story too. So that's, trying not to make it, my story.
Yeah.
But, and I relate with Sarah with the glute pain, because that's kind of my thing. Oh, and the knee. And I'm going to let the lady know who's got the bone on bone. I also have that in my knee, and I don't really have any pain.
Woo!
And and yes, and that wasn't where my story didn't really, but my struggles aren't with my knee, but to encourage her. My doctor even said that with the mind body thing, he goes, there's plenty of people that have bone on bone and they don't feel any pain.
Yeah.
So,
I was
but I know
thinking that. I don't want to
Yeah.
make general claims, but like you always hear those examples. I think we
Yeah.
just don't have enough research on everything yet.
So,
But thank you for saying that.
Yeah. But if but I'm saying that she could still, and
Yeah.
I know this isn't a mind body advice I'm going to give her. It is an exercise, but there's a lady named Alyssa Kuhn, Kuhn, I believe, on YouTube, that does lots of exercises with arthritis, and that really seems to help people. So if she wants to try those arthritic, exercises, it might help her.
Yeah.
with the
Yeah.
pain.
Okay,
Because
cool.
she suggests things like walking backwards and doing things that we don't normally do, and she's very, very gentle.
Yeah.
Okay,
And even
so-
just having that, like, kind of like, okay, here's someone who specializes in this and it's a gentle approach. You're probably going to be, have a better result because you have that.
Yes. She
If
goes,
you
and
have
even
that faith in it.
even
Yeah.
exercises sitting down and stuff. And so she does seem to help. But that's what I
Yeah.
started, because my whole thing started with my knee, because I was flipping a house, which was stressful at the time, and had other stresses going on. And I was washing the floors, hardwood floors on my hands and knees, and I stood up and my knee went out.
Mm.
And so I couldn't walk. So I went to the doctor. He said I had the bone on bone, which I didn't even know I had arthritis. And then I knew my knees were bothering me. I had a suspicion. But anyways, went to PT. That seemed to help. We were going to go to Alaska, and I got obsessive about, I have to have my knee good. I have to have my knee good. And so I was doing the PT, which was helping. But then I kind of kept saying my butt is hurting. My butt is hurting. Then I have to do posture therapy now, because I have to do everything I can in order to make it right, so I have to go over and above. So then I started doing posture therapy, and my butt was starting to get worse. Then we went to Alaska, and just the stress of, we're going there for 3 weeks, and I get scared about everything because I want to do adventures, but I'm scared of every adventure I do. I'm going to drown in the water. I'm going to get eaten by a bear. I'm going to, I mean, everything is all crazy. And then it's raining too much. And so I think that's part of my problem. You know, I worry and everything's a what if in my life. What if this? What if that?
Yeah.
So I want to have fun,
Yeah.
but I'm done. So
Oh,
so
you're
my knee did pretty good. But then when I got back, I thought, now I still have to do more. So then I went to these ladies that were able to help my son that do kind of like a nerve gliding. And
mhm.
in the meantime, my butt ended up getting so bad. I ended up having like, I guess, piriformis syndrome. And it was the most painful thing ever. So then of course I'm researching that, and all these people have horrible results with that. And it's this horrible pain. So I had myself all into,
Oh,
oh my
really?
God, I'm going to have
Oh,
this and forever, you know, what am I going to do?
yeah.
And I don't want a shot. Ended up going to PT for that, which seemed to help, but it progressed that now all of a sudden the actual piriformis feels a lot better.
Oh,
But my butt went into, now I have glute pain and muscle pain like all over, like in both sides of my butt. It was inside, like the up, you know, the top
oh,
of the, you know what I mean? Like your waist,
yeah.
I guess, area, the
Yeah.
waist part in the
Yeah.
butt, sides of the butt, down into my hamstrings where my hamstrings were burning on both sides of my
Oh,
hamstrings.
both sides. Yeah.
Had MRIs. The doctor said I do have mild hip, oh, in my hips. He says I have mild hip arthritis.
Hmm.
He said that the MRI didn't show that I had hamstring tendinopathy, but he sees it. But he saw that was weird that it'd be in both hamstrings, you
Really
know, and I
weird.
wasn't a runner or anything, but I was doing
Yeah.
the posture therapy and yoga stuff. So I guess I have diagnosis. He said if I didn't get better, then I could have these shots in my hamstrings, or
Wait,
maybe there's stuff.
so he said they didn't see it, but he could see it? Or is he
He
basing
could
that on your symptoms, or is he basing it on something he actually saw that no one
He says
else?
they're all inflamed. He could see the
Oh,
inflammation in my
okay. Yeah.
hamstrings.
And so that type of
So
diagnosis is kind of like, um, my elbow hurts and they say it's a tendonitis. It just means like an irritation of the tendon and inflammation. And that doesn't mean it's a structural diagnosis that is from a structural cause, because our brain can produce inflammation. Our brain is in control of all of that. So just in
so that
case your mind is going down the rabbit hole of
it
now there's
is
something
because,
actually
yeah,
structural, just,
exactly. And
yeah, just like
it,
the people, the young athletes who 89% of them had a hip labral tear, you can have physical things on an MRI that are not causing pain. So if you had said there was some actual damage to the tendons, who knows, that could have happened decades ago, but he didn't even see anything on there. But inflammation is just a sign that basically you're under stress.
okay, because that's exact. Okay, because it's also like, yeah, up in my sit bones, you know, high in the sit bones. When I sit, I
Mhm.
can feel it in those bones. But then doing the
Yeah, if
research
you're
on
going off of,
high hamstring tendinopathy is also another very hard thing to get rid of. People say, they say, you
yeah,
know,
because you're treating
so
it physically and it's not a physical problem.
right. Okay,
Yeah,
so
of course it's hard to get rid of. And, honestly, I did PT for a long time and I didn't know it was hard to get rid of. So you're probably reading the stuff of people who didn't have success and then they're writing about it. And if they had success, they're not writing about it because
oh,
I
even
don't
my doctor said it was very hard. That's why he talked about the
really.
shots.
Hmm.
But
Well, I mean,
I just tend to question it because, like I said, it's in both sides, and he even said that's unusual.
yes,
And then I was going
it
with
is.
PT, and my PT, worked on that, but basically did some needling that seemed to help a little bit. But I've kind of like plateaued where something's got better and some things didn't. It gets where I sit. I feel like I keep telling my PT almost felt like I was sitting on a rash. Everything feels really bumpy and steamy and
Yeah.
really weird and uncomfortable. And now it's in my lower back,
Oh my gosh.
and my orthopedic said I should have a MRI of my back, but I chose not to.
Uh-huh.
So anyways, I'm going down and so the PT thought it was chronic myofascial pain. So when you said myofascial is in the brain, or fascia's in the
Of course
brain, and it's
it
not.
is. Of course it
So
is. What controls the fascia? It's not like it just
but
randomly gets tight because of structural things. Our brain, because of the nervous system, our nervous system controls the muscle tension. If you're in fight or flight, that's a high activation and your muscle tension is tighter. And we can have certain neural pathways that are, we've predicted and we've practiced. And the way that your pain is spreading, that is not how structural pain usually progresses. Usually if you have a structural injury, it's just this one place and then it heals. But when it's
Mhm.
going from one place to another and both sides at the same time, highly suspicious that it's,
Yeah.
and then it's spreading up the back. And it's like the more you're chasing these remedies and they're not working, and then they're saying more things, I'm imagining the emotional, consequence is probably more fear and more
Right.
distress. And then what we know happens is that increases our pain, which is probably why these are so hard to treat, is that, again, you're chasing after these symptoms and it's not going to be helped by the symptoms. And then we use that as evidence that it's not working. And then we get more fear and then we get more symptoms.
Right. That's exactly it. I did stop PT recently now because I
Oh,
went for 6
yeah.
months and I was like, okay.
Yeah.
So now I started with a yoga therapist who
Okay.
specializes just with me and basically
Oh,
worked more on breathing and some very
yes.
different kind of movements, restorative movements. And
Yeah.
she says I'm so tense and tight that nothing I did in PT is going to work because
Yeah.
I have too much. So here I go again.
Yeah.
So now am I trying to tell my brain though that I'm doing the yoga not as to cure my symptoms and my pain, but I'm doing it because it's good for my body and my brain. And I want to do some of my PT moves because I actually got quite strong with some things, doing planks and doing things. So
Yeah,
I
but
want
the
to keep
strength
doing
isn't going
stuff.
to get you out of pain. And the strength,
No,
there are
but
people
I
who-
want to be able to keep doing it because I've come far. Why wouldn't I want to keep strong, But I don't want to do it if it's
It's a
going to
good
go against
question.
my.
I mean, definitely when we're coming from we have these ideas of what health is, and it's like, if we're strong and all this stuff, then we'll have less pain. And I know you didn't say that, but definitely if you're like, well, why wouldn't I want to do it? But if you do have resistance to it, then you wouldn't want to do it, because if it's creating more fear than, relief, then you wouldn't want to do it right now. You could, if planks are triggering, maybe planks aren't and you like planks, but if there's fear around it and there's, increased anxiety around it, it's better to just imagine yourself doing a plank, or imagine there's people who, there is a research study where people actually increase their bicep strength by imagining doing bicep curls. So there's a lot of misinformation about how we're going to get better and feel better. But when we are thinking I have to do certain exercises and certain movements to feel better, that's just not true most of the time.
I understand that. I think
gonna-
my point, I think I was more trying to do it because, nobody likes doing planks. I don't like doing planks, but I'm just saying, I wanted to let my brain know that it is safe to do moves and exercises, even though I'm not going to do those moves to heal. I'm doing those moves because, hey, they're keeping me in shape and strong. And so,
Okay.
but I
Hold on
try
just
not
one
to really-
sec. I'm going to just address, because I'm going to come right back to you. Sarah said she's going to leave. She had a question earlier in the chat that I think I answered, where you were, or Carol was talking about fear of fear, and we did the tree thing and we talked about titrating. And then Sarah said, how would you work through that? That's how I would do it, is introducing that fear and doing basically somatic tracking on it, or neutral reactions to it, or doing that tree analogy. That's how I would work through it, is just fear is just another sensation in the body that your brain's reacting to, that we can tell it is normal and it's fine. And then it won't produce it so much when we don't have so much resistance around it. And Janet says, or Sue was saying, nickname is perfectionist. I can relate to what you're saying and have glute chronic pain too. And Jake, a lot of pain with sitting and standing. And that Sue said, it's interesting about inflammation caused by stress and not structural, if not seen on MRI. Okay. Yeah. I don't want you to think I'm saying if you don't see it on an MRI, I don't know. I don't know how I want to clarify that.
He
but
saw
yeah.
the inflammation. He said he saw inflammation.
He
on
did
MRI.
see inflammation on the MRI.
Yeah.
So yeah, just in general, there was a research study where they showed that people produced inflammation in their joints just by imagining a hand movement when they had CRPS. So we know the brain can produce inflammation. So just because you see inflammation on an MRI doesn't mean it's not mind body and that you have a structural issue. Does that clarify? Sorry. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yep.
So basically, that diagnosis of inflammation is not a structural diagnosis. It's a stress related. Okay. And Sue says,
And
got
I
it, thanks. Okay.
And I understood when Sarah was saying that it's there all the time, because I'm kind of with
Yeah.
her as far as too, like, I may not feel like, I mean, I can talk to you, I'm sitting here, you don't know, but I'm feeling, the discomfort,
Yeah.
the sensations, it's always there. It's always kind of in the back of your mind. I may not be, I could still laugh and talk to
Yeah.
you, but I'm still always feeling it. So I think maybe that's what she meant. So it's like always there, except she said she had her 5 days with her.
Yes, exactly. And I
yeah,
want to
before the-
challenge you
Yeah.
to start to open your door just a crack to like, maybe there are times you get really distracted. Because again, pain being in the consciousness means it's not always being produced by the brain. Most likely it may feel like that. And maybe I'm just saying that because I've heard a lot of people say it's constant. Believe me, Betsy, I'm the exception. It's constant. And when they start looking and they're like, you know what, I did get really distracted and I noticed the pain wasn't there, or I started running. So I'm not saying that, I don't know what I'm trying to say. I'm just offering that it could be possible, even when we have that belief and we have so much evidence for it, that like the more we're focusing on the good things and how good they feel, sometimes we're even like, oh my gosh, for a little microsecond, that pain wasn't there. And that is just such good evidence for our brain of like, pain is in the consciousness. It's not like a structural thing that's always being produced. It's where we're shifting our focus. And that
Okay.
story that it's always there, I'm going to call it a story, and hopefully that doesn't offend you, but like just softening around, like it's possible that could be predictive coding, because I've seen it change with many, many people who say it's constant. So it's possible even for you, especially where there's nothing like a tumor, a fracture, an infection, or bone-on-bone arthritis on your MRI.
Mhm. Okay.
So
I guess
anyway, just
my main
keep
thing
your eye
was
out for
trying to,
that, like the detective for the opposite. And same with Sarah, right? So I know that wasn't even your question. We're like rabbit holing
Right.
everywhere, but we'll tie it all back together, I promise.
well, that's okay. Yeah, I'm just touching it on, all just saying I kind of have all that hypervigilance every time. Or sometimes the pain might be like milder, and then like I'll start, I go for walks every day, but then sometimes, all of a sudden I'll be more in my hips, and it's like, oh, okay, I'm noticing, but you kind of get that like that disappointment, and it's hard not to get the outcome dependence, it's like that's like what I'm struggling with, or the time, because I feel like I'm doing everything, I'm doing it all, I'm doing the journaling, I'm doing the meditating, I'm doing the podcast, I'm doing the I feel like my fear, I mean, before, when I was having severe pain, my anxiety was like, I mean, I was waking up like with shakes. I was shaking and having, I felt like I was so hot. And so things have really calmed down with my anxiety. But I mean, I still have it, of course, because it'll just come out of nowhere. You're just all of a sudden, you'll get an extra twinge than normal. And it's like, oh, you get that disappointment again, or that anxiety, or I just feel like, or I guess I don't know. I feel like I don't even know what my question is. I don't know if I have a question.
Okay. Well, okay. Everything you've said so far sounds normal. I think you've hit the nail on the head with that reaction to the pain being disappointing or frustrating, or, like I use the example a lot of like when our leg falls asleep, like that can feel really, really uncomfortable, but we're not usually like, oh my gosh, I've had the worst day. My leg fell asleep this morning. Like we just like, it happens. We know it's not a big deal and it moves on. When we have those twinges and we're like, oh no, now what does this mean? Have I done something? Am I not doing it right? Why can't I get this? Maybe something's really wrong. Then the brain pays attention to it and produces those kinds of things more and more. But I'll tell you from personal experience, this is so interesting. When I started dancing, because I do a lot of country dancing with dips and spins and stuff, my neck used to, catch. And my physical therapist brain was like, that's a, facet joint impingement. And it was from that movement. And I really didn't want to believe that. And it was just like, I think that all of these movements are healthy for my neck. the more I do them, like, it's just, my neck loves moving in all these different directions. It's strong, it's healthy. And the neck pain, it used to like come up, and the first time it actually did hurt for a while. And then the second time I was just like, no, I don't think this is really a thing. I think my neck, I might have gotten kind of scared, but I think it's just like more of a trauma response and tightening up, and it went away. And then every time it would happen, it would go away within a minute. And then it stopped happening. Like, it happened less and less. And now it's rare that I get a twinge in my neck, and I am like doing head rolls and right. So we can actually train our brain to do those sharp pains and things less and less if we're not reacting to them like a problem. But yeah, it's so hard because that disappointment, that, frustration with ourselves, all those kind of things, that is still in the category of fear. It's actually, if you think of the nervous system states, it's actually more like freeze, which is a lower nervous system state. Then like the fight or flight has more like energy. It sounds like you have some of both, like some flight, like I'm doing all these things and I'm fixing it. And then the freeze part is like, why is this still happening? It's hopeless. This is never going to get better. What's wrong with me? Overwhelm. I'm doing all the things. Why isn't it working? So basically all that's happening is you're going from flight to freeze, and maybe some of both at the same time. I got to do all this stuff, but then you feel like literally like collapsed and lifeless and, down. And does that resonate that's going on? Yeah.
I feel like what Sarah said, like I spend, like, it's almost like my job now. It's like, and I get into my routine. Okay, I have to do my journaling. I have to do my meditations. I have to do my book work. I have to do my yoga now. I have to do my PT now. I have to do my,
how does that feel saying
my
that?
podcast now.
Saying that. Yeah. I'm getting like tense just hearing you say that. How does that feel to you saying that?
I mean, in some way, I like it, because I like having the structure, I guess, and and the meditation helps, and journaling. I've never wanted to journal before. I always thought I hate writing, but I like the freedom now where Nicole's like, so it can be messy and and you rip it up. So I rip it up every day, so nobody has to read it, so that type of thing. But the other time, not really, because it's like if I had a job, which I don't, I wouldn't have time for this. It's like
Well, no need to guilt yourself about that. You have this amazing opportunity to like really work on all this nervous system stuff and calm, and really find for you, like I said earlier, that playground of like, what are the things I really like, and what things, not just because someone else said I need to do, planks to be strong, but like, how does my body like to feel? Like I never do a plank, and I have great abs, and you know what I mean? Like, I think we conflate like doing the activity with getting the result we want versus like how we're feeling, because we could do all these things out of fear and still be super activated because we're in flight. And so we could meditate and do, your morning routine, if that's what that is, right? It's just saying like, and this takes up all this time. And if you're loving it, then great, do it. Some people might that might be the favorite part of their day, is that I get to just do self-care for 3 hours, and I love it. But if you're doing it and you're like, now I have to do this, you literally was saying, now I have to do this, now I have to do this, doesn't sound like it's really that downstream kind of feeling. Like, this is from Abraham Hicks. They use this analogy of like, there are many things you can do to get the result you want, and some are upstream. And so it's just going to take a lot more work, and there's a lot of resistance. And those are usually the things that people are telling you have to do. And it feels very like cringy inside, but you're like, well, I've got to eat this certain way in order to be healthy, even though I really want that piece of birthday cake with my whole family. You know what I mean? Like, that's upstream. Downstream would be things that are like, instead of like listening to, 4 podcasts per day that, you just feel like anxious if you're not doing it, and you're just like, I have to do it. And you don't really feel a net positive from it or whatever, maybe a little bit, but there's so much work involved or whatever. Anything that's upstream. Something downstream might be more just like, enjoying that time listening to a podcast on frogs or something, something else that you're interested in, or reading that romance novel, or, like really starting to show your nervous system that you're safe, not just kind of telling it, but like doing those things that are in that higher vibration, or that are enjoyable or pleasurable or transcendent emotions. You feel gratitude or joy. And that, if you're just like, I'm nowhere near that, what are you talking about? Then you kind of baby step your way towards it. Because again, we all have to build our capacity for tolerating the rest and repair state.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like that's your main job, is like get to that rest and repair state as much as you can, more and more of the time, and stay there more. And that may be by taking a nap and not doing 3 hours of listening to podcasts and journaling. That might be the path of least resistance and more downstream, and get you regulated faster. Because when you're dysregulated, if you think of the freeze state especially, your energy is so low, right? And so forcing yourself to do all these things isn't really giving you a net positive. It's just kind of depleting the few resources you already have. So if you're in freeze, something like taking a nap is going to be more effective. So does that make sense? Just kind of like less might be more, if you're getting that sense, which is kind of the sense I'm getting from you, but you're the best one to judge.
Right. Okay. That sounds about right. Because I've had my PT and my doctors all say I've never seen a patient that's so diligent, like want to get better, do everything they say. Tell me X, I want to know X, Y, and Z. I hate unknowns. I don't like, and I think that's part of my problem too, is accepting, life, there's always going to be struggles, and I can't have positive outcomes with, which I try to control, I guess.
Yeah, that's where the nervous system stuff I think would be really helpful to you. I like to just look at all those things in the rest and repair state. And there's like connection and playfulness and inspiration and learning. And so those might give you some ideas of like how you want to incorporate that more. But that's what I would suggest for you, is like a little less of the action oriented, like going out and just plowing the fields every day to get your result, but more of the like letting, seeing the fruit that's ripe and letting it just drop into your hand. You're not having to go out and struggle to do this. It's more of this allowing that's going to get you further than, doing all these things, right? It's downstream.
Okay. And accepting, I'm trying to accept that this is where I am right now with my pain, and accept it, but it's,
yeah, that's a tough one. Yeah, I'm trying to accept that that's where I am. If you're there, I mean, there might be some things you can do, and also just like that distracting can be so helpful. Like, this is a moment of suffering, and that's when I curl up in my bed with my blanket and eat my oatmeal cookie and watch a Hallmark movie, because you know what I mean? Like, that could be just like so much more healing to your nervous system than I feel really crummy, and now I have to push myself to go to yoga or else I won't get better. Like, none of that is true. Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So you thinking just calming the nervous system down is going to help the pain versus doing all the emotional work and all the
Yeah, I mean, the emotional work is
brittle,
part of the nervous system too. So it's not like they're totally separate, but like you can do emotional work in a lot of different ways. So if I did a whole like probably 9 months of obsessing about Nicole Sachs and journal speak, and I loved it. And I was just like, ooh, moving that energy through, and it felt so good. And I looked forward to journaling, and I would rip it up. And then I started feeling like, I don't want to journal about something bad today. I'm feeling pretty good. And I just, the journaling piece fell away a little bit for me. And now I do it maybe every couple weeks. Especially if I'm feeling weird and I don't know why, I will journal. But journaling hasn't been a daily practice for me for a while because I just have gravitated towards other things. And that's that flow of like, there are hundreds of ways to calm your nervous system. Some people love cold plunges, and some people, exactly, I get that face too. And then some people, like, there are so many different ways. And so just, this is the process of starting to feel safe within your own body, trusting yourself. And the more you do it, the more you'll gain that trust. But it is a little bit of a leap of faith at first to be like, okay, I want to follow steps 1 through 5 that this person gives me, but then 5 different people are giving me 5 different things. And then I'll just do 25 things per day. And then before you know it, you're stressing yourself out so much that's why the healing's not happening. Not because you're not doing enough, but because you're doing it too much from the fear energy and urgency. Yeah.
Yeah.
Saw a lot of nodding there. How did that land? How did that go? I'm just kind of looking through the comments, but what are you thinking now?
I'm thinking, that you probably covered it.
Okay.
And I just have to slow down and try not to, like I say, the outcome dependence and just acceptance and
Have
the
more
fear
fun.
about
Have more fun.
going places. Like we're supposed to be going pontoon boating next Sunday, and I love going on pontoon boats, but I'm scared now. Like I'm gonna be on this pontoon boat for first, it's a 2-hour ride to these people's houses and to go on and then be on the pontoon boat sitting all that time. And even though I've been adjusting to the pain and kind of going, well, it is what it is. I'm gonna have it whether I'm there or whether I'm here. So I might as well go. But it's still,
there's still fear about it. Yeah.
there's no fear.
That's where that graded exposure can help. I have a graded exposure meditation on my podcast, so you can just listen along with it. And I would imagine like that type of thing with a pontoon boat specifically, or with, whatever it is, speaking in front of people I've done before, or it doesn't have to be just about a pain or a movement, but just a general, like, even just creating for your brain the alternate story of like, it's thinking it's going to go this way or possibly will. And we're like, maybe I'll feel good on it. There might be things I like to see. I want to feel this emotion, and feeling the emotion ahead of time, so much more likely that you're going to have that story happen than if you never even conceive that it's possible that, you know what I mean? It's just,
Right.
Yeah, creating that environment ahead of time, because that fear can cause so many of the symptoms, and the fear, like, it's not even happening right now. There's literally no danger to your physical body right now, but thinking about it can cause the fear that can cause pain in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
We just want to be like, okay, thank you, brain, for, being so vigilant. And I can see that I'm safe right now. And, I might be a little afraid, kind of like that tree analogy. I might be a little afraid, and I might really love the wind on my face and the feeling of the sun on my face. And right.
All right. Well, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Great questions. And I would say, like, I don't know, if you're, just, keep, what was I going to say? I don't know. Doing the work with someone can be really helpful. Like if you're getting stuck on some of those graded exposure things, there's a lot of coaches out there. I have a group, and if you're in my group, you can do a session with me for $100 once per month. And so there are chances to get, if you have a specific thing that you want to really go deeper on, that's a fear that keeps coming up. If you're finding that on the podcast alone, it's harder to kind of get yourself to do it. It's kind of like doing a YouTube video for exercise versus having a personal trainer. Sometimes it just, if you're beating yourself up that you can't do it on your own, maybe it's because you're really asking a little too much of your nervous system when it's already overtaxed, and having a little extra support would be helpful. So again, you're the best judge of that, but maybe there's a little bit of an expectation of I should be able to do this all on my own, and, you know, just getting a little extra coaching like today maybe can help.
Yeah, I like to try that. Because like I
Okay.
said, plus I've spent so much money, as everybody tells you, I'm sure, you know, but
Oh, on
all
treatment.
the other things they've
I
done,
know.
you know, plus my posture therapy guy wasn't insurance, so that was, you know,
Oh
out
my
of
gosh.
pocket. My lady
Yeah.
who did the nerve gliding was out of pocket. So it's like,
Yeah. Oh my
you
gosh.
know,
Yeah.
so it gets to
Yeah.
be a lot. So, but
That
so you
is
said
the
it's
thing.
$100 for
an hour of one-on-one if you're in Alignment Academy. And Alignment
okay.
Academy is just $49 a month, and there's 2 calls per week. So these type of coaching calls I do twice per week for an hour. So 8 calls per month. You can hop on if you ever need a little assistance, or you can listen to the replays. And then there's written coaching as well if you're not able to make it to the calls. So then you just have kind of some insurance of, if I have something come up, I have a way of getting coaching for it, and a community of people working on similar things that I can, you know, feel like I'm not alone in this. And then if you, right now I'm offering, I don't know if I'll do it forever, but at least right now I have the capacity that, you know, if you're in Alignment Academy, you can do a one-on-one with me for an hour for $100. So that can be a nice way to go really deep on a subject. And
Mhm.
yeah.
So are the calls then like this? When you're
Yeah, the
saying
calls are
calls,
like
it'd be
this. Yeah, just give this
Okay.
information to everyone, because like I feel like it's a great program, and it's this type of format where people can come on. It's in Mountain Time. So 8 a.m. Mountain Time is when we started today. Calls are on Tuesday, 11 a.m. Mountain Time, and Thursday, 6 p.m. Mountain Time. So you can just convert that to what your time zone would be, but you don't need to come to every single call and get coached on every single call. You won't be, but again, you can learn from other people. You can, there's replays of it's on a private podcast, so you can just listen to the calls. But yeah, it's called Alignment Academy. So yes, I'll just segue into that little plug for my program, because you guys, we're not meant to do this alone. And I love one-on-ones. I started with just only doing one-on-ones, and I do 6 months for $6,000, but that's not for everyone, right? Not everyone. And for people who have that capacity and can do it, like, oh, our results are amazing. And that's like 27 weeks of one-on-one with me. But I also wanted to provide an option for people, a little more of a DIY, but like with a ton of support still, so that right now it's only $49 per month. I'm going to raise the price to $99 a month, but right now it's only $49 a month. So if you sign up for Alignment Academy now, it's always $49 a month for you, no matter what. And as long as you stay in it. And then it's not a certain amount of time that you need to stay in, but you guys, for any of you, like, it's nice to give yourself like at least 3 to 6 months to like really integrate this information. So that's what I would suggest, is kind of think of like a 6-month, 3-month or 6-month container of it. But again, I'm not going to make anyone stay in it if, you know, if they aren't like, you know, resonating with it or whatever. But also, it's not just kind of like a one and done thing, usually with nervous system healing and, you know, pain reprocessing. So like a lot of people, you know, they might have been in my program for like a year, but they like to just be able to hop on for a question once a month or something if something comes up. And yeah, so anyway, it's a little bit about that, but thanks for that diversion. And does that feel pretty complete for you then, Janet? I think.
Yep.
You felt good. Okay, let's go to the chat. When I get impatient and frustrated, I tell myself, silly brain, tricks are for kids. Like the tricks commercial. Yes, I love that. And Arlene, rest and repair. And then is there guidance of how long to do daily practices versus fun things? Okay, that's so funny, right? Like we're like, but tell me how much fun time should I have? You know what I mean? Here's what I would say. I would try to make your daily practices as much as of fun as you can. It's like the upstream, downstream thing. You will start to know by how you're feeling, like if it's something you want to keep doing or not. And I know that sounds really hard at first, probably because you're like, well, I don't know, because everything, just feels like everything hurts or whatever, right? So I get that, but also just trust me that as you do it for a few days, you already start to know what kinds of things you like more than others. It's just like kind of like with food, you kind of might have some foods you like more than others, right? And so the more you can be in the parasympathetic calm state, the rest and repair state, the better. So if that's by doing fun things, great, do those more. If it's doing by daily practices, do those more. But again, I'm not going to give, there's guidance of how long to do things or not, because it's really not about the doing, it's about the energy behind them. You could sit and have a meditation and get into a really good, peaceful state. And that would be so much more effective than doing 4 hours of, exercise and posture control and diet modification. And right. It's not what we do. It's the energy behind it. It's the emotion you're feeling. And you want to feel in the calm, regulated state more and more and more and more of the time. And those other symptoms will just go away. Because you can't be in fear and calm at the same time. So if you're in a lot of fear, you can try to decrease the fear, but sometimes that increases the fear. Or you can increase the fun, the calm, the distraction, the pleasure without guilt. It's totally fine. Do it more. That's my main message. Like, do more fun things. I mean, don't lose your job. Don't like ruin your relationships, but outside of that, like do as much fun stuff as you can. That's my theory, honestly, and it doesn't have to be fun. It could be calm, or it could be like soothing or whatever, right? It doesn't have to be like going for 4 hours. It could just be fun is, like listening to this music that I really liked as a teenager and just like actually enjoying it, right? So just like look for, I made a joy list a while ago, and it was like, I love the feeling of clean sheets, and I love seeing a dog with its head out the window, and I love when I'm on a boat and I feel the wind on my face, you know what I mean? Just like all of these times that you feel regulated, Deb Dana calls them glimmers. Look for the glimmers, stretch out the glimmers. These are already happening in our lives. We just want to turn our attention to them. And then we'll feel better, and then we'll feel better. Yeah. Okay. Did I get to all of the questions? Yoshin, you're still here. Did you want to ask your other question? And then there are some write-in questions too that I can answer.
Yeah, I'm still here. It's
still here.
I'm not sure
Oh my
if
gosh,
you,
what
if you
time
know,
is
but
it? What time is it there for you?
almost 3. It's 7 in the evening for me.
Oh, okay. I was like 3.
No, that's okay.
AM?
But you're still
okay.
you're
I
almost
don't feel
3
so
hours.
bad.
3 hours in call, so it's quite long. Yeah. My other question was about a client who has migraines.
Yeah.
And she says she has 23 out of 30 days of migraines. And
33 out of 30?
Yes.
So she might catastrophize a little.
Yeah, I hope so. But
well, wait, I mean, hold on. 33 out of 30?
No, 23, sorry.
Oh, okay. I was trying to make a joke because I was
so she has 1 week.
Oh, 23 out of 30. Okay, that makes more sense.
So normally
okay.
I see people once a week or so,
Yeah.
but I can have an appointment with her once a month because that's her migraine-free week. So I'm into that, and it's also it feels really like a conditioned response because it's also about when it's her period she has 1 week, and when it's after and it's before she has all kind of if this then that. And last time I saw her twice now, and last time I asked about her childhood because I was very curious how her brain and what state of her brain is, and she told me quite a terrible story about her youth, so I can tell for sure that her brain is in danger mode very long time. She's only 26, by the way. So for me it feels really like where to start, because it's such a huge thing, and with migraines I find it hard to do somatic tracking on it. And I was just curious, like if you get a client like this with so much migraines, where would you start? What would be your suggestion or your idea?
Well, I love the stuff that Dr. Schubiner says about headaches and migraines. He has a little chart. I can't remember what he says about headaches, but again, thinking of what we're trying to rule out as far as structural, like I think it's like 99% of headaches and migraines are not structurally based. So
Yeah.
already just knowing like, if she's had imaging done and there's no cancer, there's no tumors, there's no obviously fracture, there's no fracture, there's no infection, no bone-on-bone arthritis, like chances are there's not an actual structural cause. Now, this is something that I don't know, I feel like I've made some people mad with this, but then their migraines have gone away. So I think the end result is good, but and you being a guy, you might be prepared for a little backlash, but I quote Howard Schubiner, where he says in his FIT criteria, which are how to tell if pain is neuroplastic by how it behaves, that menses, these are like triggers that should not cause pain, periods and cycles is one of them. And same with like, he calls them innocuous stimuli, like barometric pressure is another one that everyone's like, but that's a real thing. But he's like, it doesn't cause pain. And when people start to change their belief on that, their pain goes away. So there's so many people that argue about it, but at the same time, I always just say, if you can open the door just a crack, you might be surprised at things changing. So it's possible that that's not causing the pain. And other things he says are like lights and electronics and wind. And like, these are not damaging things. We don't want to go through life fearing that the hormones in our body are causing us pain, but it's very easy, especially for women, to do because of the cycle and noticing, and the brain loves to predict and loves to be right, even when it's miserable. We'd rather be right and miserable than open a new possibility of something else being possible. So anyway, I like to approach that topic tenderly and with so much compassion, and also like, this is actually really possible. And I can think of 2 people offhand that were the most resistant to it. They're like, Dr. Schubiner's not a woman. So, like both of them said that. It was really funny. But I think, a lot of women are being tired of being told like, nothing's wrong with you, blah, 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 right? So we're not trying to say that at all. We're just trying to like give them the possibility that your brain has made all of these connections and it's been very real and it has produced them because it's expecting to, but it also doesn't have to be predicted, and you're not in this prison for the rest of your menstrual cycle. And then, all the problems with menopause, geez, she could believe a lot of those too. So like, just thinking of like, the nervous system ultimately controls the hormone levels, the neurotransmitter levels, all of those things. So going back to just regulating the nervous system is always going to help with, even when people say it's hormonal, well, still let's regulate the nervous system. But then just starting to be that detective for the opposite, when I've just suggested to those 2 women, one was back pain actually, and one was migraines, within a week, actually the one with back pain told me later that day her pain had gone away. Even though she was fighting me on the call, she's cute, but she was kind of like, okay, well, I don't believe you. But then she did, and then it changed. And then the other one with migraines, she was just like, well, I've had them since I was 15. And I was like, okay, but it doesn't mean that they didn't start as neuroplastic and they still are. It doesn't mean it's structural just because you've had them that long. And hers took longer to kind of believe and stuff, but she has, I think, 50% less migraines, and she doesn't associate them with periods anymore. And so, yeah.
I really hope that for her, because it's quite, it's terrible to see her in her 26 years old and then having this for about 5 or 6 years now, I think. And this is just something she thinks it's going to last forever, and she has a lot of research on her migraines, and they have some sort of specific names for it. I don't know by head, but she the doctor seems to exactly know why she has the migraines and what's with the migraine. So it's quite of a diagnosis that people hang on to and say, yes, I got medicine for this, and they do that, and makes it also a bit hard, I think.
Yeah. And when people have their like recovery medicines and all that kind of stuff, I'm like, you hold on to those until you feel like you're ready to get rid of them. Because a lot of times people start doing this work and then they're like, I have to be off these pain meds in order to, do it right. And I just think of it as training wheels. So like doing whatever, like it gives them so much security to take that pill when they start to feel a symptom, but then also just like be that detective for the opposite, maybe even get a notebook and say, those times that, I was on vacation and it was a week before my period and I didn't realize that when I was really having a good time, there was that day I didn't have, or the symptoms were less or whatever. And really like, I can only think of maybe one or two people that haven't been able to be detective for the opposite and find something. I used to say everyone I've ever talked to could find something, but a couple of people didn't. But usually once you just shift your focus onto what feels better and when it doesn't hurt, and chances are out of those, 3 weeks over the last 5 years, there's been a day that she's had those hormone levels that her migraines haven't been the same consistency. And once she can start to untether those things, but I think I just like to give people resources if they're not coming to me asking for coaching, and I'm just like, here's the way out. They talk about migraines. Curable talks a lot about migraines specifically. So that's nice. It doesn't have to be something that they talk about, but it's always nice when it is something they talk about. But there's a lot of research on migraines being mind body, and with that kind of history.
I just, what you said about opening the door, I'm hoping in the next few sessions that I can open the door a little bit and show her that there might be a way out, and in the end it must be her choice to go through the door or not, or but it's going to be a challenging one.
I know. Oh man, I feel for you, because like when you're like kind of like a foot in both worlds, like there's this like physical treatment you're offering people, but then you also want to give them all this other stuff that would help them so much more, but they're coming to you for kind of this expectation of, treat it this way,
but that's a little bit the opposite, because I'm an occupational therapist, and in the Netherlands it's everyone knows PT, but OT is not so familiar. So a lot of, especially when it's someone from 90 years old and has trouble in his house, then everyone knows that I can fix that. But like with these kind of more like things as fatigue or pain, it's really not so common yet that we treat that. And if we do, it's more about how to deal with it and how to get best out of life. So, and that's really the opposite about what we're doing now, because then I say, all right, we can work around it, but we can also try to fix it. But that's only knowledge and skills that I have since less than a year. So it's for me also new, but it's so it's fun that people come to me and they just don't know what to expect. So in the end, I can tell them quite everything, because they don't have so much expectation. So that's really I call that an advantage.
It is an advantage. Yes.
Yeah. So I use it.
Okay, cool. I love that for you. And
cool.
I'm sure I believe you're probably like attracting the people to you that you can help. I have a belief in that kind of thing. Okay, Sue says worth a shot. Since what she has done hasn't worked. When we do what we always have done, we get what we've always got. So for sure, people, that's the nice thing, is they might be kind of like desperate enough to try anything. And you're in such a good position to help people who otherwise might not come to this information for another 10 years, or who knows, right?
Yeah. Thanks. I'm gonna try.
Good luck with that. And
so
from my experience, what I would say is that I in general was surprised how many more people were receptive to it than I thought, because at first I was kind of like, people weren't going to want to hear this, and you can still hear, as I was talking, you can still hear a little bit of that talk in my head, because I don't want to like offend people. I don't, there's still that people pleaser in me. And of course this work goes better when they're receptive to it. Like you can't, it's like pushing a noodle. You can't just like force that, noodle to do something. But if you're, just like, hey, what I would always do is just kind of relate it to stress, and almost everyone could relate. Oh yeah, my pain is worse with stress. And then that was a little in. So good. I'm so glad you're doing that.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time and for doing this.
My
It's very
pleasure.
inspiring.
Thank you. Okay, and I'm gonna, it looks like no one else has their hand raised. Well, Janet, you do, but I think that was from before. You're good? Yeah, okay, just making sure. We can do some double coaching, but we can also, there's just a couple people who wrote in some questions, so I'll do those. Okay, I've been doing mind body work for 3 years and made good progress, but I'm stuck in a cycle of symptom imperatives, like revolving door of symptoms. And so that just means you guys like, one goes away and then you get a new symptom. I can't seem to stop the revolving door. And that could just be, even just like noticing a little bit of predictive coding there, like, just kind of almost, you might get into that habit of starting to expect something else. So, and you're just telling me what's happening. But again, the brain only needs 1 or 2 times of that happening to be like, this is a pattern. Can't seem to stop it. It always happens. So just being like, maybe next time it won't. Anyway, so even though I know so much about TMS, I could probably give a lecture, haha. It's really frustrating. I see many of my symptoms as mind-body issues, but it seems to always take a medical professional or physio to clear me before I can move forward. After I accept the symptom as TMS, then it morphs into another symptom. Any advice for getting out of this rut? Yeah. So, again, what you're saying is talking about that symptom imperative, and part of that is just really normal. So, when we're like, I keep getting this, and it's part of the process, part of what might ease some of that resistance to what's going on, even though it's annoying, is just being like, okay, a symptom imperative is not a big deal. It's just another thing. Now that that's happened a few times, you might know that you're a little more prone to that. And so what you were saying here was like, I get a new symptom, and then there's a lot of stress about it until I get it cleared and find out it's mind body. And then I'm able to move on, and then I get something else, and then you have to go get it checked out. So knowing that, I'm never going to tell you to like not get something checked out if you have the feeling that you should. But I also want you to just, kind of see this pattern, and it is very normal. And I know with myself, it feels very comfortable to, when I have a new pain, not jump to the conclusion that it's structural, because I know myself now and how, these symptom imperative type of things work, or how it works when I'm stressed. So I always think of, I've trained my brain now to think of what's emotionally going on, but you're more in the phase of like something physical is going on, and that's a normal thing to think. Alan Gordon says, even evolutionarily, it's normal to think physically something has happened because I have pain. So just in general, maybe a piece of advice would be just kind of thinking about how you're reacting to symptoms. If you're catastrophizing, let's see if I have the pain catastrophizing scale. Maybe instead of taking the time to read it, I've linked it. If you guys are all on the Tell Me About Your Pain community, it's linked there in a post. But pain catastrophizing is just simple statements that you would make when you're in these freeze or fawn or flight states. But it just indicates to you that your brain's thinking along those lines that will increase pain. So maybe you could start to notice, oh, I'm, doing some catastrophizing here, or notice the tendency, as we've talked about on earlier call or with earlier people, of like having that annoyance or frustration or beating yourself up. And you did say frustrating. So just knowing, even though it's annoying, that your reaction to the pain will determine if it's amplified or decreased. And so just starting to have the observation and awareness of like, okay, it's not even that bad that I have a pain signal. That actually is not a problem. It's how I react to it that will, increase it or decrease it. And so, like I was saying with my neck, when I started having a pain, and it was easy for me to believe nothing was structurally wrong with my physical therapy background. I didn't think anything was super damaged, but still, if with any new pain, just getting curious about it and thinking of the possibility that the mind could be creating it and that it's not something structural, could change, how you're responding to it and then how the pain responds in turn. So let's see, distracting, as I've said, can be good. Just noticing without judging. What was I going to say? There was one other thing I was just going to say. I just forgot. Okay. So advice for getting out of that rut, like, when I do notice a new symptom and think it's probably a symptom imperative, just start to get really curious. That detective for the opposite is always the tool that I use, is like, okay, I have this back pain and didn't really start with any physical thing. So already I know it's probably emotional, and my other pain just went away. And I have a belief that when one pain goes away, the next one comes up. And so that's probably a sign, right? So just getting objective about it. Oh, I know what I was going to say before. I think I said this earlier in the call, but what Alan Gordon says is more important for brain rewiring. It's not that you never have pain. That's not the sign of successful brain rewiring. When you have the sensation and you can react to it differently, that is what is rewiring your brain more than if you don't have the pain. So again, kind of just reframing what's going on with the pain and not even being a problem, and what you're being frustrated about and what you're making it mean about yourself, and any ways that you can like have a little more acceptance. Oh, it makes sense. Oh, I'm stressed. Oh, thank you for trying to protect me. That kind of attitude might help your pain go away so much faster. You can always use the techniques of somatic tracking, things like that. And, just feel in your body how it's feeling when you're thinking about what could be going wrong and getting to the doctor and all those kinds of things. Or if you're thinking about, this being more mind body, just see how those different options feel in your body. You might have this tendency to want to go and get it cleared, and that feels really like urgent and just kind of a step you need to do, and it's like fear-based. Or you might have kind of a peace about going to the doctor, and like, I like to gather information, it feels more peaceful. So I don't think it's necessarily bad to go to the doctor. And for sure, like, we do want to make sure it's not cancer, inflammation, or infection, broken bone, those kinds of things. But also, there's a lot of fear that goes on when we're assuming it's medical. We're going to doctors, we're getting tests, we're waiting for test results, we're told some big long word that just means inflamed, we're given a diagnosis. Like, that can produce a lot of fear, which we know can produce a lot of symptoms. So if you're the kind of person that tends to have mind body and you're still in that phase of symptom imperatives, just open that door to the idea of like, maybe once one decreases, it's not going to increase another one as much. Like, I'm, like, do you see how that's predictive? That's a little predictive right there. One goes down, another one comes up. I just can't handle it. Versus like, maybe as I'm regulating my nervous system, these will be less and less and less. In fact, in the way out, they call them extinction bursts, because if you're having them, it means that it's extinguishing. The fact that you're having them means that it is going to be extinct soon, if you can just trust the process and stay calm when you have those symptoms. Does that make sense? Actually, you can't respond, but that was hopefully what you're asking for. Okay. And then there is a question in the chat. Did you want me to read that? I didn't know if it was a direct message. So just let me know if you're good with me sharing that. The one, you know who it is, who just messaged me. Before I read it, okay. I just wanted to make sure it was a direct message. So I didn't want to okay. Wanted to get your permission. Okay. So you said, I've been learning and applying mind-body approach for 2 years with little results. I've been inconsistent with my approach, maybe due to fluctuating belief. Also realize I've been using fear-based intention. How do you advise to keep the momentum going with the mind-body work? Okay, so I like to look at just kind of like all the little innocuous little things that might be going on. So I categorize them generally, I think, as like the belief category. So there might be little thoughts that you have about that one PT that said, this is caused by your posture and you have to change your posture, whatever. Like there might be some belief that you gravitate to. I mean, there's actually this client I can think of who she gets it cognitively, and she's had times of being pain-free and walking pain-free, but then every time she has pain, she's like, I think I just walked on it too much, right? It's like her brain is kind of like walking causes pain. So just look and, maybe even get some coaching. Again, there's a lot of coaches out there trained in this process now. Low cost options if you're looking for that, but like having someone reflect back to you like what your blind spots are sometimes can help, because you might just be like, well, that is just true, and I might hear it and say, I think that's predictive coding, not just an unquestioned truth, right? It's like the fish swimming in the water. It's like, what water? It doesn't realize that the thoughts, well, the water is what it's in. You don't realize that those thoughts are even happening because you're just so used to them. Same with those personality traits / survival states. That's basically dysregulated nervous system of, the perfectionism, being really critical of yourself, that urgency. When you're feeling any of those emotions, that's not the rest and repair state. It's going to make it harder to heal. So looking at, where you might be putting pressure on yourself, where you might be people pleasing and you want to create some boundaries, or where you might actually be wanting to change an aspect of your life as far as like, changing jobs where you feel really trapped or things like that. Like sometimes those emotional contributors can be that kind of unseen source of pain. But as far as like the way you phrased it was like how to keep the momentum going with the mind-body work. I mean, I really like to think of it as like calming the nervous system and doing things to get me into the rest and repair state. Think things that help me get into the rest and repair state too. It's usually not doing things. Usually the doing things helps us think other things. And that's because really it's changing our thoughts. But I love that word momentum, because a lot of times, I mean, that's what we want to get going in the other direction, but it's hard because our momentum is in the direction of fear and dysregulation, and that's how we want to feel safe. So just noticing as we start to do those things on purpose that are self-care, that feel good, or we start to think some different thoughts that feel better about pain or about our relationship or our situation, right? Like any of the thoughts that feel better, it's just like a gratitude journal actually helps you feel better too. And I think of it as just like sprinkling more and more of that into our lives, because again, we're not used to being in the rest and repair state for long periods of time. And so when we do start to relax and we do start to feel good and we do start to enjoy food, we're like, oh no, this is going to be so bad for me, or what's going to happen, or I'm going to pay for that. Right. And so just noticing it's a lot of, self-care, and it might look weird to the rest of the world that you're not, you know, quote unquote, doing as much as, you know, you used to do or they're doing, and just starting to really be in alignment with what resonates most with you. And I like that idea of momentum, but riding, you know, that momentum of like what is feeling good to what's feeling better, and just finding more and more joyful, exciting, fun, calm, sweet, nurturing things in my life. So hopefully that answers your question. Okay. And then there's another written question. I would love to start running again. However, I have hip bursitis in both left and right hip, and also mild osteoarthritis in both hip joints. I also have a tear 50% in my hamstring tendon. Is pain experienced at these points in my body TMS? So it could be like any of those things you've said could 100% be TMS. Generally, I don't know everything that's going on. So that 50% tear in your hamstring, if that happened within the last 6 weeks or something, then maybe there's something structural still going on. 6 to 12 weeks. You know, they say 3 to 6 months. That's like a bone heals in 6 to 12 weeks. So hamstring, soft tissue starts healing within a few days. And even a tear will heal in 3 months, at least in 6 months. Anything after that, it's neuroplastic. There's no reason for that tissue to keep producing pain. It's already started healing. It's healed. Hopefully that resonates. So hip bursitis, that just means inflammation of the hip bursa. So we've already talked about inflammatory diagnoses. That's not really a diagnosis that we worry about as a structural thing that we need to change structurally by, you know, not moving or changing our diet. We just regulate our nervous system, and that takes care of the inflammation. And then mild osteoarthritis. Hey, good news. That is not a diagnosis that causes pain. The scans of X-rays of people with diagnoses of arthritis do not reflect how much pain people have. People could have a lot of arthritis and have zero pain. People could have zero arthritis or very little arthritis and have a lot of pain. So that diagnosis is just kind of like information, but it's really a common thing that people have osteoarthritis, especially mild. So it's nowhere near the bone on bone. So that one, that's not producing your pain. Yes, you have that structural thing, but so do many other pain-free people. Okay. So we don't have to convince ourselves, oh, I don't have it, or, you know, like my, you know, that's all in my head. No, you have that. And just like you might have, if you've lived a few decades on this earth, you might have a few wrinkles and those don't hurt. You might have a few gray hairs and those don't hurt, right? And so these little changes inside our body, they don't need to produce chronic pain either. I had a tear in my hamstring that it was, geez, like 20 years ago when I was training for a marathon, super stressful time in my life. Not even sure exactly if it was a tear now looking back, but there was a lump there, and it, excuse me, was something that affected me for a while. And I even started thinking like, maybe it's just something I'll just kind of like always have every once in a while. And then I got to the point with doing this work, and one day I was doing yoga and I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't have it anymore. And then like the day after I started having it again, it was so funny. So just know, with all of those things, you probably have a lot of neural pathways going on, but it doesn't mean that they have to cause chronic pain. The more you're worrying about them as a problem, the more your brain will produce pain around them. Okay, so is this pain experienced at these points in my body? Probably TMS, yeah. Despite physio, osteopathy, etc., to remedy these problems, pain has not resolved, and MRI imaging shows they're still present, but haven't gotten worse. So again, yeah, You might have a diagnosis and see that there's arthritis on there. And one day it hurts and one day it doesn't, because the arthritis isn't what's causing the pain. Initial diagnosis was more than 3 years ago. I'm finding it so hard to try to teach my brain that I'm safe when all I can focus on is my diagnoses. Oh, I love this, you guys. As you can tell, I'm reading and then I'm talking. So just so you know. So this is so common. Almost everyone that comes to this group, not everyone, but like a lot of people coming to this group, they're like, but I have a diagnosis, right? We've kind of already talked about that. So what I would advise, Dr. Schubiner has these fit criteria. If you're in the Tell Me About Your Pain group, it's pinned at the top of the Facebook group. And you can start to see the ways that neuroplastic pain behaves that's different than how structural pain would behave. That can be a good way to reinforce your belief, because you're like, oh, wait, I had it like 3 days and then I didn't have it for 3 days. And if damage in my hip is causing pain, did that damage go away for 3 days, or was the damage never causing the pain in the first place, right? So starting to be detective for the opposite, using those fit criteria. Like I said, detective for the opposite is my favorite. You can even get a notebook and start to write those times of, I was on vacation and my pain was a little better. I was distracted talking to the friend and I sat longer than I usually do. And I, right? So doing that, not only do you start to build that evidence for yourself and be your own best evidence, but also it teaches your brain the process of not focusing on pain so much and focusing on other things and focusing on when it feels better rather than when it feels worse. So it's just a whole practice of shifting away from focusing on and producing more pain. So initial diagnosis was more than 3 years ago, finding it hard to teach that she's safe, or he or she, I forgot who this is. During the time, the pain has not gotten significantly worse. However, it hasn't improved either. It's important to note that my personality type ticks all the boxes when it comes to neuroplastic pain. Yes. Okay. Also not a surprise. And also I would say good news. You might not say good news at this point, but good news, because in a way it is good news, because man, when you have the approach that actually helps for what you're treating, it goes so much better than when you're trying to treat it all these physical ways and thinking you have to do, jump through all these hoops in order to be pain-free. So I think you're already on the right track, that there's fear. There's, when you're linking the pain to there's injury, then the brain is like, oh, okay, then every time there's pain, there's probably an injury, so I should produce more pain. There was this quote I found, I reposted from someone a little while ago, and it was from the Boulder back pain study. Yoni Ashad was one of the researchers, and he said, the people whose pain level decreased the most were the people whose belief about pain causing injury changing the most. So maybe that's a place where you can start to soften, is like, pain is produced by the brain. Just because it is real, intense pain does not mean that there's structurally something that's causing the pain. It just means my brain has gotten into this predictive pattern of producing it, or whatever, however you want to say it. But starting to believe that pain is just a signal from the brain and it doesn't mean the tissue is injured. When you can believe that less and less, you'll have less and less pain. That's basically what they showed in the Boulder back pain study. So yes, a lot about beliefs. Again, for you, getting outside of your own head. If you guys are listening to the podcasts and listening to the stuff and trying to apply it yourself, it does help to reflect off of someone else doing this work. And just, it's hard for some of us because we're in environments of maybe our spouse doesn't believe what we're doing and our doctors don't have any idea what we're talking about. And so it can feel really like, okay, is this even a thing? Can this really work? So it sounds like you are really the perfect kind of candidate. And there's no reason from anything that you've said there for me to believe that your pain is anything other than TMS. So I would say just keep trusting the process, look for those little fine tunings that you can do with your belief. And I'm a really good person, I think, to help you with that belief about the structural things, because I do have that physical therapy background, and I've just immersed myself in all of the research for the last few years to really see there is just no structural correlation with 99% of what they see on MRIs and pain. All we're looking for with those diagnostic tests again, is ruling out tumors, infection, broken bone, and possibly bone-on-bone arthritis, but not every single case of bone-on-bone arthritis causes pain either. So, okay, let's see if there's anyone else. I know Peter joined and then he said he was coming back, and he's not back. And I think he's in a different time zone. So it's like the middle of the night maybe for him. But if people don't have more questions, I'm not going to just keep staying on. So if there's anyone else, even if you want to just like, you don't have a question, but you want to like celebrate something, we can, use a little time, see if Peter comes back on. I know he has had a lot of questions in the group. I recognize his name, so I want to answer his questions if I can, but if he's not here, I can't. So, if you've already been coached and like something else has come up for you that you want to talk about and just like share, totally open to that. Word silence. Okay, guys, I think we might just wrap up. I think we might be done. Carol's gonna have to run, but thank you. Oh, you're so welcome. You're welcome. This was actually really fun for me. I liked it. It was fun to see some new faces, to get these questions, to have a captive audience. I love to talk about this stuff. So people that love to listen about it, it's like a win-win for me. You guys are great. Keep up with this, you guys. This is not only is it going to help you get out of pain to do this work, but you'll be easier on yourself. You'll be nicer to yourself. It'll help your relationship with yourself, with other people. It'll benefit your work, all the domains of life will be affected by doing this work. So even if you're not seeing the needle move too much on pain, keep up with the, being kind to yourself and self-compassion and, noticing those survival states that you're in and regulating. And I know like PRT and Dr. Schubener don't talk as much about nervous system regulation. I really integrate that a lot because it just makes so much sense to me and simplifies and allows me to have so much more compassion for myself. When I think of it as my subconscious nervous system that formed when I was a child, then I'm not like, you're so stupid. Sometimes I still am, but like, I'm less likely to be like, how stupid of you. How come you keep doing that? You're just like, okay, how many times does it take a child to learn something, right? And the more you're like, oh, you dummy, you're like, oh, you're really scared. You're scared of a monster. You're not like, oh, you idiot. There's no monster, just approaching it like a child. So the nervous system for me has helped me give more vocabulary to what's going on, have so much more compassion, because we can't really change when we're resisting it so much. I can tell you personally, because I get coached every single week, just personally. Every time there's an emotion I'm resisting. I hate that I get so jealous. I hate that I get so angry at him. I hate that you know what I mean? It's so immature of me that I am comparing myself to this other dancer. I wish I didn't do that. It always starts with, it makes sense that I do that, accepting that I do it, loving on myself even when I do it. It's totally okay that I do it. And then guess what? It happens less and less. But when I'm like, I never want to feel angry, it's so, why am I so bad? Versus like, yeah, I'm a human that has all these emotions. I have sensations, I have emotions. When I don't react to them, they pass. it's like a storm, a weather system. It flows past, and then this vibration quality of life, there's ups, there's downs. I always know the downs are coming back up. And, then you just have more trust in that whole process. And it's simpler because all you have to really do is focus on how you're feeling and calming your nervous system. You don't have to remember all of the, specific things that someone else said. You kind of just tune back into yourself. So if you're more interested in nervous system stuff, I think I already said I have those free modules, but I've tried to compress all the information that I think is relevant into it's 4 videos. They're about an hour and 20 minutes, and just gives you a good, just general summary of how the nervous system affects the body physically, from blood pressure changes to hormone changes to retaining fat. You're trying to lose weight on the best diet in the world, but you're in freeze. You're not going to lose weight because it's not about the food you eat or the amount of exercise you do. It's about your nervous system state more than anything. So nervous system, that's my big thing. Nervous system and have more fun. Those are my messages. Yoshin, sorry, go ahead. Do you have another question?
No, yeah, I just want to comment on what you just said about teaching and see your nervous system as a child.
Yeah.
I had a client of mine who was actually a teacher.
Yeah.
And I was also explaining him about, he was complaining about that it took so long to learn his brain that the pain was not necessary and stuff. So I also made him imagine that he has a child in his class that's saying 1 and 1 is 3.
Yeah.
And how do you going to respond? How are you going to help him understand that that's the wrong answer,
Yeah.
And that really resonated with him, and it helped him really about, oh yes, I have to do it calm and I have to repeat it a lot of times. And also the thing about what you said, that when someone makes a mistake, then that's the opportunity to have the corrective experience, like Ellen says.
Yes.
So, because if the child doesn't says 1 and 1 is 3, but it keeps it for himself, that you can never correct it.
Yes,
So
exactly.
it's the same as if you don't have the pain, then you don't have an opportunity to tell your brain, hey, this is not okay. This is just false alarm. This is wrong. So that really helped. It was fun.
Yes. Oh, I love both of those. And then just to riff off of that just a little bit, what that made me think of is sometimes we're so perfectionistic about being pain-free, and that means I'm doing it right. And here's the thing, as you expand, I've already kind of alluded to this, but just to end with, as you're expanding, as you're growing, and for me, I'm growing my business and I'm putting myself out there, posting things, and I'm having more people on a call at once than I did before. And all those little things can trigger my nervous system. So to expect I'm going to be symptom free my whole life, that would just mean I'm not growing, I'm not evolving, and that's not what I want. So there's going to be this expand, contract, there's going to be this stretch, there's going to be some symptoms that come up. But I like to see them as just the rumble strips. I don't know if they have them in the Netherlands. On the freeways here, they have those rumble strips. You start to go out of the line and there's these bumps and there's this feeling, and you're not oh no, I got on the rumble strips. What am I doing? I'm such an idiot. Oh, I've messed up. You're just oh, feel this? Course correct, right? That kind of intensity of just you're not someone how's your day? Oh, it's fine, except for I went onto the rumble strips 3 times, no, it's not a big deal. That's how we want to see these symptoms. And I still get some symptoms sometimes, of course, because I'm a human, but it's that means we're just expanding, we're growing. This is how we grow and stretch. And so these symptoms are not a bad thing, but when we think they are, and then when we blame ourselves, that's when we cause ourselves actually more pain. Yeah.
Yes, I totally agree.
You
Thank
get
you
it.
so
You
much.
guys get it.
That's a good wrap up, right?
Yeah, good. Let's end with that. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much. Next time I feel like doing one, I don't know when it will be, but I'll let you all know. I just kind of, I just in my whole business, I kind of follow my inspiration. So I'm so glad that you guys were able to join, and the people who are listening back, hopefully you were able to get through all this content, and maybe in chunks or whatever, but maybe you'll listen to it a different day and something else will jump out at you. There's a lot here. So again, thanks you guys. I just have so much gratitude for this community and all you guys doing this great work. Love it. Okay, take care, you guys. Bye.